I'm still mad he took my mama from me. Remember she used to hug me and say, boy, you a king. I try to ignore the pain, but boy, do his thing. Mama, your boy doing his thing. So I hope you proud up in heaven. Put your chest poking now. But yeah, I did it my way.
Let's give my mother, Ellen.
You're either surrounded by good spirit or you're surrounded by a negative spirit, bad spirit, evil spirit, right? Positive, good versus negative, evil, right? And the difference is our intentions, and the difference is proper application of morality and the golden rule to love one another as you love thyself.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you, everybody.
Put a tap on it.
It's nice to see like more familiar faces again, like for future events, and we want to keep this going, like just keep the momentum. So that's why we're doing one, even though it's holiday season and it's a little busy, and there's a lot of people who told me they can't come. We want to keep this momentum going because what's really important if we actually want to create change is we bring people together and we just keep doing this. Like to me, that's the most important thing, which is why we have some strategies, and we want to talk a lot about strategy tonight, like what we can do, how we can reach the youth, how we can talk to the youth. I consider myself still one among the college age, so I want to reach them if I have the ability to. We're thinking about going to universities, and I'm going to be sharing with you a really big idea too later on, but I want to also get you guys' feedback. Before we do that, I'm going to let John speak first, and then I'll do a little
You want to give out the pens and paper, whatever you want to do?
Yeah, so you guys can take notes if you want. I brought a notepad, so any of you guys, because I'll be going through like stuff that you probably have never heard of as well.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, my name's St. John. I've been running around with this guy over here,
No,
Cory,
I'm going to use my
Endrulat.
phone.
We've been doing things like freedom festivals and putting on food forest tours and running around trying to educate people about more freedom-based, holistic lifestyle, natural lifestyle choices, right? And of course, we identify a lot of stuff in our society today that's pushing us into that direction. The reason they call me St. John is because I was up in the city of Philadelphia. I just celebrated 8 years clean. I used to be a drug addict. I used to be somebody that was in and out of the jail systems. But I just celebrated 8 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. But, you know, one of the things that I had learned along the way is that, you know, like,
No more kombucha for her.
that's such a waste of kombucha.
I'm good. Yeah.
No, so one of the things that I found over, like, I would put a couple years or a couple months together of clean time, and things would work out for me, and then something tragic would happen in my life where I would feel physical pain on some kind of level, and I would always go back to this other lifestyle that I was living, this self-centered, criminal, you know, like scumbaggery, for lack of a better word, right? And, you know, like I couldn't understand why that kept happening. Well, over a period of time, I found every way that didn't work, right? And I also noticed and paid attention to something that was working in my life. Now this is what it is, and it's very simple, and I named my website behind it, and I named all my actions and activities, my affairs with each person, how I interact with groups, how I interact with individuals, my family, my neighbors, my coworkers, anybody, anywhere. This is how I act. I use my intention, I use my care. Okay? So when I say thank you for coming out here tonight, what I'm actually saying is thank you for giving us your attention tonight. But you're not just giving us any attention, you're giving yourselves and your plans for the future some kind of attention. We're not here to sell you anything. We're not trying to get you to sway a vote in a certain direction. We don't want you to participate in things that you don't want to participate in. This is a totally voluntarist movement, okay? And the way we operate and the things that we've been involved with, I'll give you an example. We were involved with the Path to Freedom with Jim Gale at this food forest abundance over in Golds Lane, St. Cloud, Florida. Big operation he's got going there. He's holding these food forest tours. He's building food forest academies. He's got the community involved in all these different ways. But the one thing that they did the night of the event, which was awesome, they had a meter scientifically, and they were showing something called the Hawkins scale. Has anyone ever heard of the Hawkins scale before?
This is so much fun.
Okay, so this is a measurement
that are here
of
today have the
magnitude
solutions
when it comes to the consciousness. Okay, and if you get like a number like 200 to 300, you're like an individual, you're like a little aware, something like that. But when you start getting into numbers like 400 and 500, you're getting more connected with those around you, okay? We call it in the self-help groups like 12 Steps and AA, we call it group consciousness, right? You might have heard the term collective consciousness, right? So these terms are out there, but there's science behind this stuff. The Hawkins scale for our event hit a peak right around the time we were all communing and having a discussion like we were doing prior to us starting this, where we were all talking. The Hawkins scale goes up, and it was at 600. It peaked at 600. And that's like, what that means is like, on a scientific level, it's like interdimensional. It's like fifth dimension. It's like oneness, your higher self, the better good of others. Like, you're putting your interests in alignment with other people's interests. And this is what I found when I was in the recovery process, that when I was working with other people, volunteering for churches, volunteering for community organizations, cutting up turkeys and peeling potatoes during the holidays, when I was involved with those kind of things, I would find myself to not turn back to those scumbaggery ways, those self-centered motives, the escape programs, the false coping systems, the false coping skills, the false reward systems that I had in place, right? So utilizing things like natural remedies and working out and strengthening my core, I felt less physical pain in life, right? But by being active and being involved with other people, I was connected to society and I was connected with people on a level that I wasn't ever involved with before. So by caring about other people and being involved with other people, like you guys coming here tonight to do this, right? This is what has benefited me and has allowed me to have the 8 years plus clean that I have, right? But it also gave me an opportunity to do something else, which was exploit that. Now, what do I mean by that? So, well, went to school, I got some kind of a certificate saying that I could certify recovery, I could go out and help other people. I started working inside rehabs and psychiatric hospitals. Don't want to get into that. That's a long story. I had to retire. There was mandates involved. They wanted us to, unfortunately, and it's my body, it's my choice. I've poisoned this temple enough over the years. I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay, I'm just not. So when they said that, I didn't really have a whole lot going on. But I did have faith in myself and my abilities. I had faith in people around me. And I also knew from my own experience that by helping other people that I was never going to be alone. I was never going to be in a situation where I was going to be hungry or homeless or, laying out in the street. I wasn't going to be behind a jail cell. And I've been everywhere from dead twice, right, with near-death experiences, to incarcerated inside of a jail because of the way I behaved inside of a jail system. Now, I'm not proud of any of that stuff, and I don't say that like it's some kind of badge of honor. I say it because I've been to all these places here, and I know what it takes to live at this level. And that's what I'm trying to express to you guys tonight in this little message that I'm giving you. There's a thing. It's the basis of a lot of religions of the past and a lot of the stuff that's going on today. A lot of the propaganda and mind control comes from something called the Hermetic principles. Has anyone ever heard of that? Some of you guys are familiar with it. Okay, so there's 7 Hermetic principles. One is mentalism, okay, where all is mind. Now what that comes down to being is that we are all part of a collective consciousness. The reason these things exist in our life today is because we all agree to it. Now that goes from everything from government to the scenery you see outside this window. Everything that's in agreement with us as individuals on a collective level is why our society exists the way it does. The second law is correspondence, which has everything to do with communication. Some people think as above, so below. It has something to do with like angels and fairies and all this stuff. Now it could, okay, if that's the choices you make in your life. But correspondence is really just a way to communicate. How you communicate with one another, which is the most important thing. And I'm not just talking about each other. I mean like the society around us, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the bees, everything. How we communicate and how we correspond with everything is extremely important. So when I lost that position and I had to retire from the industry, I was involved with running nonprofit recovery houses. And the reason I got my name St. John is because I would ride around in a limousine. It was a funeral limousine, but it was a limousine nonetheless. And the limousine I named Angel. Because Angel would come and pick people up from the most seediest parts of town and bring them to places that would give them an opportunity to change their life forever. They would go into a rehab, or they would go into some type of facility, or they would get to an appointment or a meeting, but Angel was the one taking them there. And I was just a driver.
So cool.
I was just the guy like behind the wheel, or sitting next to the guy behind the wheel, like helping people out. And they started calling me St. John. So that's how I got my name. You see on my shirt, it says by St. John. That's like, how you can find me if you're ever looking for me. It's easy. I'm not hard to find. But the third law, which is really cool, is vibration. Right? So like everything we send out into the universe has to come back to us in some kind of way. Right? But we do send stuff out. Everything's in motion. Quantum science has showed us that all things are in motion. Even a solid chair is in motion. It's what makes that chair solid. Believe it or not, it's totally moving. If I had enough power inside of me, I could put my hand right through it. But that's above the law of physics, right? So we're talking about vibration. We go to the next one, which is polarity, right? Polarity is everything's duality. Everything has its opposites: black and white, dark and light, cold and hot. There's always some kind of a parallel to everything that's going on. And that's what's kind of going on in our society right now. It seems like we're leaning too much towards one direction, and we're not balanced enough for the other direction, right? We'll get into that a little bit later in the other principles, right? Because after polarity, we have
Rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm. So everything has its like a pendulum effect. The opposites have, not only do the opposites occur and exist, but they will go back to the other way. So like that's why a lot of the religions and a lot of the different types of philosophies that exist today, they talk about there's going to be a return to greatness. Like, and we're a part of that today. We're all a part of that. Like, there's no ideologies that's being promoted. There's no type of membership fees or dues. There's no type of pledges to make or affirmations to sign. There's no agreements to make. You bring what you have to the table, just like I've always brought what I have to the table, right? So then we go from rhythm, we go to cause and effect. Now, you guys have heard of karma, right? Everybody heard of karma in this room? Has anybody not heard of karma?
No,
Do I have to break that one down?
I know her.
Yeah, there's a couple words we could use, but karma is the type of thing where, like, a lot of people, like, they don't understand that, like, what you do unto others is what's going to be done unto you. It might not be in the here and now, okay, but it's going to happen eventually. Now, I personally have a different belief system than most people, and I'm not going to try to promote that to you. But it's been my experience that everything that I've done wrong in this world, I've had to pay for and give back in some kind of way. Welcome, brother. Come on in, man. You want to get yourself a piece of cake or some kombucha? You want to come on in, have a seat? Got a chair right here for you, right there for you. Welcome. So, like I was running groups and seminars in the city of Philadelphia, helping people with serious, severe mental health issues and drug addiction issues, homelessness, PTSD, vets. One of the greatest populations we have in the city of Philadelphia and most cities around this country of homeless people or people that are struggling with mental health issues are veterans. Like, what a shame. These people think that they're standing up for something that's ideal for our world today, and then they turn around and get shafted by the same government that requested them to do this stuff, and then that's horrible. And then people like me are out there trying to help these people, and they're like, some of them are just totally lost, right? So I was involved with doing that kind of stuff, and I really am grateful that I had the opportunity and experience to do that, because it better prepared me for when I came across people like Cory and people like one of my mentors. His name is Mark Passio. He talks a lot about these principles that I just mentioned. The last principle that's known through the Hermetic principles is the principle of gender, which is masculine and feminine. Does it mean physically? Not necessarily. We could be talking about masculine attributes and we could be talking about feminine attributes. What's the difference? Well, masculine would be somebody like my friend Bob over here. Bob likes to think logically. He likes to think in a way of security. He likes to think in a way of providing and constructing and building and things of that nature. Whereas like the feminine principles would be something along the line of creativity, imagination, caring, having nurturing abilities. Instead of just being a provider, he would be like the person that waters the plant and helps it to grow. Does that make more sense? Does anybody have any questions up to this point about what I'm talking about? No? Rich? Bridget?
So I just said you missed one barking orders. That was
Barking orders. That's the wife's job. That's the feminine principle number one, okay? If you guys didn't figure that out, honey-do lists and everything. If you guys didn't. So the last one is the one that I focused on the most because it's hidden from us. And it's not fair. Now, there was some great teachers that came through our history that have talked about this principle, and it's the principle of care. It's the lost principle. The principle of care, if you ever see like a lot of the Masonic lodges, they use the square and the compass. You guys are familiar with that. Some of you probably have seen that before. Well, you ever notice there's a G inside of that square and compass? And a lot of people think, oh, it means grand architect or, you know, greatness or God or... No, the actual meaning behind that, this is one of the biggest secrets that they have that they hold over us, is it means generative. Genere, it's Latin. It means to care, guys. Okay, so what we put our time and energy into, what we care about the most is what's going to manifest in our realities. When I'm thinking about bad things and I have bad intentions and I go into things the wrong way, I've had the bad results, so I know what not to do. If I go into things with good intentions and I cast aside some of the distractions, the propagandas, you know, the misdirected desires, the judgment, right? What's the last one? Judgment, desire, and ignorance. Well, what's ignorance? Ignorance is lack of knowledge, right? So we've come together tonight with an attempt to try to gather together our collective. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I see new people too, which is great. We're going to gather together and we're going to have a discussion about, you know, what we could do to move this movement forward. How can we care more so that we can protect the interests of our families, our neighbors, our children, our animals? Like, we're under severe attack on many levels, but a lot of it is because we agreed to it. Right? Now, I know Miss Carmen knows a lot about that. Right? We're in agreement with a lot of stuff. She's going to have a chance to talk. We're all going to have a chance to speak this evening. But I want to welcome you guys, and let's give ourselves a hand, guys, for coming out and being involved with something a little alternative, a little bit less mainstream, right? And this is what I do. I care, okay? People say, what do you care about, John? I say, I care about what you're caring about because it's impacting me in my life. You're infringing on my rights. You're infringing on my ability to overcome and get by and take care of my own, right? Because you're in agreement with what? Something somebody told you, that they're so far removed from us. They're not down here buying gallons of raw milk from Moonbury, right? They're not down here putting gas in their car or taking their children to the public school system. They're not doing that. We are, right? So what, they're telling us what we have to do next? Like, based on what? Their experience? Because everything I've done up to this point has been based upon my experience. That's why I'm caring so much. And I want to thank you guys for coming out. This is Cory Endrulat. He's going to have a discussion with you about freedom by the roots, okay? And we're going to try to brainstorm and come up with some ideas. He mentioned it briefly. We were involved with building food forests. We were involved with doing movie screenings. You guys got ideas. We want to hear them tonight.
Yeah.
We want to hear them.
We got over 100 people in the Telegram, and we have more people on meetup.com, so it's really good. There's a lot of groups that are connected. Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So, just to give you a brief undertone of like all the groups I've networked with, I run Freedom Cells, I run We Are Change chapters down here. I connected with Keith, who runs a meetup group, and there's also Ken, right, who also runs a meetup group, and you guys work together. And then there's people from the Western Aid Christ Foundation. They have chapters down here. These are all people who just care about freedom, and they're not biased on like, oh, you have to think this way or that way, and if you don't think my way, you know, nothing like that. These people are very caring, they love others, and that's what I'm pretty much open to as well. So as long as you care about freedom, anybody's welcome on the Telegram. That's how we mainly communicate and share the events, and you can advertise your business, you can share whatever you want. But I'm going to be going through this short presentation I made, just flying by it. but it's information that I don't think most people have heard about. Now, the reason why I call it Freedom by the Roots and why I'm going over this is because I think if we're going to move forward, we do have to have some sort of unifying ground moving forward in order to have a greater impact. You know, this is my view of it, and of course I have a notepad too with ideas that I want to go over later with you guys, some really big ideas, and I also want to take notes, so I have this with me. And if you want to take notes as well, because you came in later, we have a notepad and stuff we can give you. But yeah, let's just get started. What's up? Oh, I can stand. Yeah, I can stand. Okay.
I saw him either side.
So, how many people here have heard of this word, statism? Very basic slides, you know, just putting a word out there and describing it. Has anybody ever heard of this word?
Yeah.
You've heard of it? Okay.
You're the only person that I've ever heard talk about this.
Yes, it's very rare in independent media, and unfortunately, I always have the more obligation of sharing it just so people know what it is, because it's never talked about. Mostly because you can't have an agenda when you talk about it. It is basically the thing that takes away agendas. Statism is what creates the state. So in short, it's the belief in authority, that human beings have a vested authority, or that they have the right to rule. Right? This has existed for thousands of years, but essentially if you believe that someone can have that authority, then they can impose their will on others, pass laws, etc. So it doesn't matter what political side you come from, doesn't matter what you believe. If you say, hey, this person has power and authority over my life and can dictate and say what to do over my life, that is you're believing in statism. It's a belief system. Okay, what do you keep pointing to?
I just want you to stay on the side so you're not blocking the camera.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So, these are three things. I'm just going to jump right to it. The Stanley Milgram experiment. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of this. Stanford prison experiment. This is more common. And then Dr. Carl Jung. Okay, so there's psychology behind this belief system. Now, why do we look at a belief system? Because this is actually what creates the world. He said the principle of mentalism is the first Hermetic principle. Hermetic principles is talked about in a book called The Kabbalion. Okay, if you ever want more information, you can come back to me after this presentation. I'll make sure you can write it down. But this is a book that is changing a lot of people, including himself, which is why he went into a whole story about it. Absolutely. Stanley Milgram experiment, basically what it was a scientist, an authority figure, was telling somebody to electrical shock somebody if they get a question wrong. It was a psychological test. It's unethical, so it's not really done anymore. It's considered banned psychological experiment, probably one of the most banned, but it also surprised scientists because they were like, how come this average person, everyday person, was willing to shock his fellow man just because a scientist or an authority figure told him to do so, and did so at the highest level of electric shock. And
that
this
would have killed the people.
Yes,
if
well,
it had been real.
it was fake. Yes,
Yeah.
the shocks were not real. So the
But
person
somebody was in the background screaming like it was.
Yes,
You know,
and they
like,
kept going because they're like, oh, scientists, I got to keep doing it. It's safe, okay. And they'll keep doing it. So basically this guy, Dr. Stanley Milgram, came to the conclusion that if Nazi Germany happened in America, it would happen because there's so many people willing to follow orders and believe that this person has an authority over their life. That is statism. And so I'm literally trying to prevent another World War II because it's absolutely possible, and here's a doctor saying that's possible. Now, although it's an unethical test, it has been replicated all around the world dozens of times. I have a whole video documentary showcasing all of it. And it's just shocking, seeing how people will break down mentally. They'll even laugh, like a fearful laugh, because it's like insecurity. And then they'll blame the scientist and say, oh, well, the scientist told me to do it, that's why I shocked you. So they try to move away their own personal responsibility, and they feel insecure about themselves. And so they are basically an order follower. Statism is the belief in authority, the belief in the right to rule. It's order following, for short. Stanford prison experiment, they gave average people the role of prison guard. And these were like good people, and by the end of the experiment, had to end within about 9 days. They turned into corrupt, tyrannical people who ended up abusing their power, that they had to end the experiment abruptly. And they did not expect this to happen. That's because they gave them this authority role over their average human person. And they took that role. They said, oh, I'm a security guard. And so now they act like they have more rights than other people. And they literally act out that behavior, and they came out of the experiment, and these were like, you know, they weren't too old. They were the college kids, some of them. Again, this one has been replicated too, and they were like breaking down in tears, like, how could I have ever acted that way? They acted like they were totally turned into something that they're not. And you see this with veterans too. They go overseas, they kill people they don't know, they come back and they have this trauma and I've interviewed them, and they have this depression and anxiety, and they end up committing suicide, is because they did things they didn't understand why they were doing it. They were convinced into doing it, and they believed so wholeheartedly that what they were doing was right, when in reality it was wrong. Just because someone else told them to do it. They knew that what they were doing was wrong, but they still did it just because someone told them to do it. Dr. Carl Jung talks about this in his last book, The Undiscovered Self. And that last book is insanely powerful. I did a whole psychological series about that, where Dr. Jung talks about this belief system and collectivism and how it gets people to do things of that nature. But the root is statism, and like I said, barely anyone talks about it. So let's talk about this then. If statism is what creates the state or government, what makes the government different from a business or organization? Because this is a very important connection. If I'm saying there's an authority figure invested in man, what makes that different from a business or organization? Well, businesses and organizations operate voluntarily. Governments operate involuntarily. So you cannot disobey. You cannot choose to go against the will or the dictates of the individual who claims to be the authority figure. That's the big difference there. So they're both forms of getting things done, but one is with violence and one is not with violence, which is why many throughout history have basically just deduced authority in government to simply violence. Because if it's not authority, it's a leader, it's somebody you want to follow. It's like, yeah, this person is inspiring, they're helping me, I want to follow them, I want to buy this product, I want to go to I want to buy this stuff, but she's not compelling me by gunpoint saying, you have to buy this raw milk.
Buy my sourdough.
Yeah, she might think and say, hey, the raw milk is really healthy and everybody got to drink it. But does that still justify violence being done against me? No, right? If you respect the fact that everybody has the free will choice or conscience to decide for themselves what to do with their own body, their own property. So you'd be breaking all property rules and consent and voluntary interaction and basic morality by saying that somebody can tell you how to live your own life. And so what's the difference then between gangs and mafia? They make people do what they want, right? What makes that different from a government? Well, statism is not present in gangs and mafia. And the reason why is because people see gangs and mafia as immoral for their actions. If they hurt somebody, they see them, oh yeah, this is not good, we don't want this. When government does it, oh, it's okay, they're security, they're the government, they need to do it. So we actually think violence is moral and necessary when it's done in the name of taxation. And we change the word from theft to taxation. We change the word extortion to taxation. We have all these weird psychological things that we do that Dr. Carl Jung talks about, and yet nobody's really addressing the psychology. I find this absurd, which is why I talk about it. So there you go. And if somebody really wants to break this down, see, do I have this belief system still? Because this is something that we do not address. This is the main thing that they teach us into school, indoctrinating us into, this belief system. Follow orders, stay in line, do what you're told, obey the flag. You know, worship the flag as if it's like a deity symbol. And they put the sun behind the president's face, you know, to make it look like they're a religious symbol. They do this stuff on purpose, and I'm telling you, we have charts, we have graphs, and it's all there. But these questions will help you evaluate for your own mind if you yourself are mentally enslaved, if you still have statism, this belief system. I call it mental slavery because that's the root to all slavery, and that is what a lot of people have referred to it in history, even the abolitionists themselves. I've studied them, I'll get into that a little bit. But this is how reality is built. It starts with our mind. It starts with the information we have. Then we make our decisions. Okay, that's going to
This
determine...
process is known as the trivium. It's
Yes.
educational base. It's very popular.
That was taken out of our school system, the
has been.
trivium, and it's old, you know, philosophy that has been like just taken out. A lot of stuff has been taken out. Obviously, that's why we're here.
And it's how our
untaught
manifested
knowledge.
reality is built.
Yeah, so we can always share more information about it, but this is a basic structure. How does our reality get created? Order or chaos? Well, it depends on all our actions, all our belief systems and manifest. So we can change the one person in power, but guess what? That one person doesn't have power if all those people don't believe in that one person having power. Plus, all the people make up the world, not that one person. So this is why I talk about this belief system. So while everybody wants to talk about left and right and this law and that, it's like, it's all symptom management. The root cause, the real change, relies in the minds of the masses. If the abolitionists wanted to end slavery back then, they had to change the minds of people. They can't just write it down and say, slavery is wrong. It's not going to change anything. You're just writing it down on a piece of paper. Now, if people see that piece of paper as authority and law, they're going to somehow say, oh, well, it's magical and it's amazing. It can make us do anything. Like the Constitution says it can take money from you through taxation. So people say, oh, well, we need taxes because this magical piece of parchment which somebody just wrote down with a pen a couple hundred years ago, some slave owners or whatever, we don't even know who they are. We're taught to believe in people we don't know. We're taught to obey people we don't
And
know.
why did they
I just
write them
think
down
that's
that
crazy.
day? They wrote them down that day for the ones that didn't know that they already had one.
And they censored the people who were against it. For instance, Thomas Jefferson wasn't even there. Most of the Founding Fathers weren't even present when that happened. This is also suppressed history. I did a video on this. And it's just mind-blowing because there were people like Henry Ford who were like, no, do not pass this because it'll just grow the government, not limit it. And that's exactly what happened. And you can see people predicting history time and time again. Most of you probably never heard of Mikhail Bakunin in Russia, but he was a friend of Karl Marx, who invented communism. And he warned him and said, if you go with this communism idea, the state is just going to grow bigger, not smaller. And exactly that's what happened. So he predicted the rise of communism. He's a famous Russian philosopher. But here's the principles of natural law that he went into. Those are all the principles right there. We talk about that a lot because this is how we actually change the world, is by teaching this knowledge, because knowledge is power, quite literally. Here you can see how it breaks down. Sovereignty, internal monarchy, one ruler, monarchon, monoarchon. Anarchy, anarchon, no rulers. That's all it means. It doesn't mean chaos, from Greek, anarchon, no rulers. So John and I, we call ourselves anarchists, although this is not a term that we like to just come publicly about because it's gotten a bad rep. There's people out there with masks on, throwing fire in the streets, doing protests. This is not something we do. Right. We educate people. We share morality. We actually teach what is order, which is quite funny to us. So they've turned freedom into chaos and turned slavery into order. So they want you to fear freedom, and thus you'll never actually be free. This is the mind wrap that we've gotten ourselves into. And so internal monarchy, we rule ourselves. External anarchy, we leave other people alone. Basically, that's how it works. You can break that down if you want to always go back to it. These are 3 of the main books I would recommend on this subject, which you've probably never heard of. If you guys heard of some of these, congratulations, awesome. Because these are some of my most favorite texts for like just really powerful wisdom that like kids can understand it. It's not hard. At least the first one. The second one is very deep into this belief system. Probably the best philosophical text of our time, I guess you could say, for statism. Like, it really breaks it down. What is statism? The most dangerous superstition. The End of All Evil by an unknown author, but it's written really simple. So I really like that one for the simplest version. Discourse on Voluntary Servitude is from the 1600s by a lawyer who really saw outside the system, and that one is amazing. For being that old at that time, he goes into the history of how all governments formed and how they all go through the same cycle. They all rise up and they fall. You can look at ancient Chinese history. 800 years an empire would exist. America's not even 300 years old, and we think we're the best, and we're the grandest, and we have it all figured out. Every country, the people are trained into thinking their country is the best, and we have it all figured out. There's not going to be another collapse, and then it happens, and then, it's like you see this cycle of history, and I'm saying you can actually end that cycle when you understand statism, because you're destroying the very thing that creates the chaos on end. Democide is the #1 cause of death. It's called death by government. If you want a documentary and a summary of everything I just said, go to that link, theliberator.us/slavery. That's the website that I run. And then I host the summit with over 50 speakers, and there's tons of resources. Needed that one slash.
Don't change it yet. They're writing it down. Hold on.
Yeah, of course. That's why I have notes for you guys. So, but yeah, and that's the knowledge part of this seminar. I want to now go into more of the action. Okay, but the knowledge really is the action, because to be honest, most people have never really heard of that. And if it's the minds we're trying to change, is it really a process of changing, or is it a process of understanding who we really are? Just as the slave would understand, wait, I'm not meant to be a slave. I was just uneducated. I didn't know how to read. I didn't know how to write. Frederick Douglass said, well, once a man reads, he's no longer a slave, because now he knows who he is and what he can do. And so now he has this power that is like, man, I can't let go of this. It's like, I'm free. I can't no longer be a slave. It's like, it's impossible for Frederick Douglass. He's like, you can read about it in his autobiography. All right, I'm going to move on. So, abolitionism. I call this the root solution. What's the solution to statism? It's abolitionism, also called voluntarism. The idea that you want a voluntary world. All interactions between people should be voluntary. Nobody should be the ruler or master over another human being. No one has a vested authority over another human being. We're all equal in rights. Essentially, we're all just fellow human beings, sovereigns, whatever you want to call it. People have a bunch of words for it, right? So this is a very basic message. You think it would be common. Well, it is. It's just we contradict it every day through statism. So we don't want to get stuck, and we don't want to be distracted. In the independent media and the truth movement, this can be very common. We want to look down this rabbit hole, that rabbit hole. What's next? COVID. Oh, this next thing that rises to the surface,
All
right?
these distractions.
Yes, they keep us away from this root cause, which doesn't want to be addressed because, you know, you have all these other things rising to the surface and that they throw onto you. But really, it's us throwing it on ourselves because we are the ones with this belief system. It's hard to say that we are the problem. It's much easier to point and say they are the problem. But who are they? They're just some people that we give power. So really, it comes down to us and what we do, and that is how we get to the roots and not the symptoms. It's really hard to come to that realization. It's like, wait, instead of saying they, instead of saying, you know, it's these people or that group, it's just generalizations. And they're just causing more divisions. This is what feeds statism. It just makes it stronger. So in order to get out of that, it's a process of realizing we have to take individual responsibility. Because the very thing order followers do is abdicate that responsibility, give it away. So here are more resources. Mark Passio's Natural Law Seminars goes into a lot of what he was talking about with his Hermetic principles. That has been sharing a lot about this information in statism. It goes into that. It goes into the belief in authority, natural law, Hermetic principles, ancient knowledge that has been lost. This is a guy who came out of that system.
He's one of our mentors. And,
yes.
He developed a network.
He was directly involved in Satanism and the Freemasons, and he came out sharing that this is the stuff they want to keep hidden from you. And he was told by them when he left, they were like, good luck getting this to the masses. They're never going to listen to you. So, like, he knows what he's up against. A bunch of people who are going to stay ignorant, who don't want to challenge themselves. And we have to do that, which is not an easy process, is waking up our fellow man. It's not about the people and power and voting, all this stuff. So voluntarism, if you look up this term, voluntarist.com as well, it goes into it very simply. It's non-political, but yet it's about ending politics. It's the complete antithesis to politics. It's voluntary interaction. You want to get something done, you don't need violence if it's a really good idea. And people will follow you if it's a good idea. You don't need violence if it's such a good idea. Taoism is an ancient philosophy from China. I consider it to be the first liberty philosophy. I wrote a book about it. I can share with you guys. I have a bunch of them with me. Very important for today's world, I would say, because the ancient Chinese really understood this before China became really corrupt. In fact, they just straight up left because they were like, we know where China is heading. Lao Tzu was the writer of the text of Tao Te Ching, if you ever heard of it. Second most translated text in the world after the Bible. Yet most people in the West never read it, and it talks about literally exactly what I'm saying. If you leave people alone, you'll actually create order. Isn't that interesting? Instead of telling people what to do, you actually create order by not telling people what to do with their lives, by letting people go free and live their own lives that they choose. This is also called spontaneous order, some people will call it. Sort of like spontaneity. Everything in nature happens spontaneously on its own. There's no thinking or planning involved. It's a beautiful process. And us humans are trying to complicate everything and put everything in boxes. But we cannot put nature in a box. We cannot put nature into an ideology. We cannot say there is one form of government, because we've tried that. And history has shown, but also evident of human psychology, our subjective mind cannot be the objective world around us. We are trying to project. Dr. Jung talks about the shadow work we must do on the individual psyche, that we are constantly projecting onto others our own problems, our own insecurities. And this is why we see in politics, I want this done, I want that done, I want this benefit. They're projecting onto others, telling others how to live their own lives. So here are some abolitionist voluntarists from the 19th century who said exactly what I said. They were saying, the government is promoting slavery. Government is slavery. Both. And that's why a lot of these guys created their own towns away from the government, and straight up, some of them went 15 years, no crime, basically had their own economic systems and everything. They had no technology at the time. They didn't have the ability to share the word. Nobody really knew what they were doing, but now I can sort of dig it all up. I had to go to the back of libraries sometimes to find their information, which used to be public. But now it's in the back of some college, university, which is insane. These guys are amazing though. Lysander Spooner, he talks about natural law as well. William Lloyd Garrison, most influential abolitionist. He was being censored at the time. Look at these abolitionists trying to end slavery. They're causing chaos. What would we do if the slaves were free? Who would pick the cotton? Oh, well, if the people are free, who will build the roads? Oh, the same exact justifications people make. So they use something called moral suasion, which means educating their fellow man to use their conscience. Also called immediatism, meaning end slavery now. If it's wrong, end it now. Don't end it later. Don't make it better. Because there are a lot of people who said, well, why can't we just make slavery better? Like, give the slaves better conditions, put them on a better plantation. But they said, the abolitionists were like, but it's still slavery. So when we say we want a new master or we want a better law, we're just improving our condition, but we're not actually fixing the condition. It's symptom management. So immediatism or moral suasion is understanding, okay, get to the root cause. Change people's minds and help them understand it's wrong. End it now. End it now. No political action. The abolitionists did not vote because they saw that voting was connected to the government and government gets done everything through violence. Why should they support that? So, ending mental slavery. Another word for sadism, like I said, is mental slavery. You can look up. Gandhi actually grew up on Tolstoy's farm. Tolstoy was an anarchist. And he was from Russia, known as one of the world's greatest writers, actually, who talks about slavery of our times. And what does he say? Government is the source of slavery. Gandhi protested in India, right? Achieved independence from Britain. And he said that mental slavery is the root to all slavery. Same thing with Martin Luther King Jr., who learned also from Gandhi. And the Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. learned from Tolstoy, who learned from the abolitionists. Most people don't know that history is very connected. The reason why these people did their actions was because they learned from the same source of knowledge that I'm sharing with you now. The abolitionists were the true freedom fighters, not the founding fathers. They recognized the founding fathers, what they created was a system that was, well, man-made. It wasn't going to work. And it was created by people who upheld slavery. And they're like, we need to end all oppression, all slavery. This is wrong. So with the printing press, which was invented in the 1840s, they used it to their advantage. Because of the printing press, they were successful. So technology is our advantage. Right now, we have technology at our fingertips. We should learn to use that to our advantage. Because that is the biggest thing if you want to educate the world and change the world. It's with the growth of new innovations that we see new things in our reality. Very, very important. So if our minds create the world and masses give power to the few, then the only logical conclusion that I see is you change the minds of the masses. Because here's millions of people following very few people. It doesn't really make any sense. And our minds create the world. So the only logical step, change the minds of the masses. There is an in-depth process of how to talk someone out of their slavery. This is not an easy thing to do because you have to do that for yourself mainly. But it's called Candles in the Dark. You can look this up. This is a class you can take online where he talks about the psychology that goes on in an individual's psyche in their justifications for believing in government and these systems and really justifying it through every means possible. I mean, people will try to latch on to anything to try to keep what they've long held belief. It's called cognitive dissonance, holding on to something and not being able to let go. Socratic method basically is the same thing as Candles in the Dark, but Candles in the Dark gives you, of course, practical application. Socratic method is asking questions, right? Just getting curious, like, why do you believe that? Well, what would you do what if I did not like what you wanted to do? Would you throw me in a cage? Would you want violence done to me? Oh, you don't like violence? Well, then isn't it voluntary? Well, if it's voluntary, then it's not a law. You see what I mean? Most people don't want violence done to their fellow man. Most people are good people, but they just don't know that they're upholding violence every time they want to pass a law, every time they want to vote someone in office. The Taoist concept from ancient China is called Wu Wei. It means non-action or effortless action. So letting things be, letting life be. That's what Wu Wei is. That's what it stands for. So that was their... No, it means non-action.
Non-action.
Yes. So like know when to act. Like in judo or in martial arts, which was invented at the same time in China. It's all about using the right muscle at the right time. Us humans were overstepping. They would say we were living in a very yang-based world, a very masculine left-brain world. So to get out of that imbalance, we need to nurture ourselves, our right brain yin side. And it's sort of missing in society, but in order to restore that, we need to let things be. Learn how to let go. So the art of Taoism is really all about letting go and letting nature grow, because you only put the plant in the soil and then you let it grow. The plant does most of it on its own, right? Your muscles, when you work out, it's when you're resting that your muscles actually gain muscle. It's not when you're actually working out. It's always when there's something not happening that something happens. It's really a strange paradox. The yin-yang symbol comes from Taoism, right? White stands for yang, black stands for the yin. So it's in everything. Like you said, the masculine, feminine, polarity, those principles. So if you apply that into your everyday life, you'll come across some interesting things. Like the fact that this room, what makes it useful is the emptiness in the room. What makes a glass useful is the emptiness in the glass. It's always the emptiness. It's always the nothing. The non-action that actually matters in this world the most. So if you want to learn more about this, the Liberator 2 News, this is what I run. We have a newsletter I put out every week, and I consider it to be really the only educational news outlet out there talking about the psychology, the science behind why people do what they do in this world, not looking at the symptom management.
And the Liberator came from?
The Liberator 2 is named after the Liberator 1, from the Abolitionist, the main newspaper that ended slavery, chattel slavery, in the 1800s. Because again, chattel slavery is just one form, and they recognized that, and they said, hey, what about political slavery? They called it political slavery. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Nita.1 is a movement that I created because I thought to myself, do we need a movement to make these ideas more popular? And this is an open question for you guys too. Do we need more of a central message to make it more popular? The abolitionists in the 1800s had anti-slavery societies and meetings, and they had all across the United States, and that allowed them to get really successful because they focused really hard on one thing. Just as the Founding Fathers, focused really hard on getting rid of the British. If you set your mind to one thing, you can really achieve it, right? So it's all about what do we set our minds to. And I'm curious if a movement would help that process or not. Nita.1, NITA stands for Nature is the Answer. So my message is always about nature. And that's really what all this comes down to, is understanding who we are deep down inside. The One Great Work we are both part of, just the content creators, networking. There's a bunch of great content on there as well. Yeah, and we call this the One Great Work. Like, trying to free humanity and change the world. And if you want to get involved with content creation, we welcome you. Like, I will help you with content creation because, again, technology is a need, especially if you want to reach this new generation. And if you want to continue what the abolitionists and the Founding Fathers started, because they're stepping stones on this path of freedom that I'm laying out here, then we need to utilize the technology. You had the printing press, and now you have TikTok, and now you got YouTube, and you have all this media. We have to use it to our advantage so we can evolve humanity to its destiny, which to me seems like freedom. You go from the very old times, and you see our barbaric people acting in ways that are very strange because people are just finding out who they're meant to be. There's no technology, there's no education, there's people conquering other people, right? But now we have mass information, mass education, and you have so many resources at your fingertips. Everybody can be enlightened. Everybody can have the education, not just the wealthy, not just the people in power. And that's what happened over the ages. They kept the Bible to themselves. They said, we are the interpreters of the Bible. You can't have a Bible of your own. But then once people started printing the Bible for themselves, guess what? Now you had Protestants and you had all these different denominations because they said, we can interpret the Bible ourselves. We don't need the church to do it for us. So you see in history this gradual, just constant motion toward individualism and individual liberty. And so we're just continuing that process by understanding what has really needed to be understood all this time, which is statism, at least from my view. Weston A. Price Foundation, great resource for raw milk, raw animal products, the stuff that she sells here, and things that are really healing for people. Like, talk about people with all sorts of different conditions. Raw animal products, there's a reason why it's illegal in a lot of states, okay? Weston A. Price Foundation is one of the only few groups out there that really champions that and really talks about nutrition from an ancestral point of view. Really like their work. They're outspoken about everything. Food Forest Abundance, they have a Telegram. Join their Telegram. They have updates. They're 3 hours from here. They have a 50-acre food forest. You can walk outside your Airbnb, pick food.
Cows.
They're
chickens.
all on the same side, by the way,
Mhm.
these guys, as what I'm talking about. They understand what I'm talking about. Jim Gale runs Food Forest Abundance. He talks about statism. He knows about it, which is beautiful because, again, so many people in independent media never even heard of it. But he is awesome. He's doing these events, and every year we're going to do more and more events. He's going to help possibly with this big plan I want to share with you guys that I have for this local area. And then unschooling. Unschooling. This is just if you have kids in school or if you have anybody that needs to be educated. I interviewed somebody. Her name is Dana Martin, and she wrote a book called Radical Unschooling. So that's really helpful as a resource. Just unschooling in general is the idea of taking your kids out of the school system and teaching them yourself or bringing them to more of an individualized approach. Because again,
She's also a content creator on
Yes.
One Great Work
Yes.
Network.
Yes, absolutely. She's on the One Great Work Network. She's also on the Summit. I interviewed her for that.
Corey, does she have, plans or ideas on how to help like single parents who obviously they can't school and go to work at the
Yeah.
same time?
So I have 2 interviews in the Summit. With one of them is a former school teacher. She's been like for over 30 years, and she shares a lot of strategies and like specific textbooks you can get, and specific things to help, like websites where you can actually get like if you want a teacher to come to your house. Like she does that. Now she does that. Like that's what she does. Like she literally goes over to other people's houses and teaches their kids and stuff like that. And there's a bunch of different programs and things set up. My friend David Rodriguez has a whole academy as well, the Valor Academy. So if you want, I can make sure you guys write things down if you reach out to me afterwards.
And then Jim's place, he's got his own
Yes, he's
school
having a school on
on
premises. So on his 50
premises.
acres, he's
Farm
building
academy.
a farm school academy where he wants to invite kids to go there.
Which could be part of what
And that's
Florida
just
wants to work
starting.
with.
Guys, we want to make this everywhere in Florida. We want to make this wildfire. And if we have several locations, which they want to have, they want to have several locations, we eventually can spread this message like wildfire. People will be growing food everywhere. There'll be self-sustainability. People will naturally want to be free because the systems, the alternatives will be so much better
Could you
than
imagine
the
if
mainstream.
the government came banging on your door and they said, this is what's going on and this is what's going on, and you were like, no thank you, I don't need your services, no thank you, I don't
Now,
need your energy,
bear in
no
mind, when
thank
he
you, I don't
says
need your food, I
the
don't need
government,
your help.
When
Right,
he says
I
the
don't need your
government,
help, I don't need any of that stuff. We have that covered.
this is the only I don't have any language. Like you don't need to learn how to say certain things, but understand this, like the psychology behind what he said. When he says the government knocks on your door, who is it that's actually knocking on your door? Based on what I said, it's people like us who assume authority, who assume like they have to
Agreement.
follow orders. Okay, so they're suppressing their conscience. They're just doing what they're told. Just remember that,
the
because there's
HOA
no
for
such
me.
thing as there's no such thing as the government,
boards.
right? There's no such thing. It's just a bunch of people, and that's it. If we can just tell people and say, hey, we're all just people. In my presentation, you notice none of the actions was stop paying taxes or anything like that.
Right.
I didn't say that.
No.
In fact, you can totally do everything the system tells you to do. What I'm saying that
But
needs
what
to
if
be
you don't
done.
want it?
Okay, well, that's your choice. That's your choice,
No,
right?
no,
I'm not going to
no,
stop
we're
you.
saying, where
She
do
has
we get
solutions
to
to
there?
do that.
We do.
Carmen
We-
has solutions to
Carmen
that.
will talk
But
about
that's
it.
your choice. I don't want, personally, I don't know if I want to take those risks, because what I'd rather do is educate everybody to the point where we can all say no together. And we have the resources where you can have just one community that says, we're not doing this anymore, and then they have a demonstration that is infinitely more powerful because they're just saying no, rather than beating around the bush and saying, well, I'm going to say no, but I'm going to do it through this paperwork, I'm going to do it through this and do that. Really, it's so basically fundamental to recognize there is no authority vested in human beings. But that idea is not shared anywhere in independent media
Right.
currently, but it's growing.
You-
If you expect me to have the answers,
I
I don't
know.
think people should have. People who claim to have all the answers already wrong. Like, because I don't claim to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I'm claiming that I know the root cause to the problem,
Right.
which is the belief system, which requires educating enough people. Now, if you have enough people like a community who can back you when anything happens,
Right.
Education, connection, like coming together.
And
like,
nonviolent
that's what this is all about.
resistance.
The nonviolent resistance is the main thing. Like for us to collectively do things in a non-aggressive way is like the most effective thing we could do. Look at all the different movements throughout the history, even during our lifetimes that we've seen on, you know, the mainstream news, where they talked about people just standing up for what they believed in collectively. And like, you know, that's how the change begins. That's how the awareness increases. For me to put this video up on, I'll give you the example. For me to put this video up online isn't as effective as if you guys all went home and posted a post on Facebook or Telegram or one of the social media platforms explaining what you witnessed and what you want to see change and how you want to go about doing it. That would be more effective than my one video.
Because how did
Does
we
that
start?
make sense?
Yeah, how did you come across this information? If you ask any one of us, mostly it's like one article, some video,
Seeking.
I guarantee you can ask most people, it's some content
People on
creator.
Facebook are mean.
Somebody.
They're just
If I may add something, so you got nonviolent resistance and everything you're talking about, and John, right?
Yes.
You guys are touching all on the good, fundamental points, but there's also a fundamental thing that we were never taught, and that's the law. There's fundamentals of the law, and if we don't understand, which we were never taught the fundamentals of law, obviously natural law is the beginning, God's law.
Sure.
Our rights come from our Creator and no man, right? So we were never taught the law, and then once we understand the fundamentals of the law that of this world that's built around us, then we can actually do something. And everything you're saying, yes, you need community, you need more people to back you, but none of us understand the law. Does anybody here understand the law? No.
I'm not 100% there, but I'm better than what I used to be.
understand the law.
Do we understand the fundamentals of law?
So, do you mean explicitly natural laws like are universal and govern the fabric of creation, or do you mean stuff written down by some pieces of paper?
All of it. So you got private law.
But how
public
would you
law.
expect anyone to understand all of
They're
it?
constantly changing it anyway.
Because we were
It's
never
all
taught.
arbitrary.
There's a book called Blackstones, and in the beginning of that book it says back in the days in Hindu and all these other times they posted the law, and at a young age you had to understand the law. Starting at 8 years old, they posted right in the town square, and all the children were sent there to go learn the law. From a young
It's
age.
probably statism.
Well, no, to learn the law of around you. So, so public law is government. Private law, there is no, your
Right.
law comes from
I
your
understand what you're
creator.
saying, yeah.
That's natural law, right? But all of us are in the public. You registered your business, right?
Yeah.
So you asked permission. Now you're subject to the
Right.
jurisdiction.
Right.
But you didn't have to, but you didn't know that.
Right.
So you didn't
But you
know.
can change that.
You can change that,
It's change.
right? So we can all operate in the private, and we can also operate in the public and do it because this whole world built around us is commerce. It's all commercial. It's all by contract.
Right.
So we're all contracting our rights away voluntarily, and they're like, hey, we've got all these subjects here. They're telling us that they need things. It's because of our ignorance. It's our
I see
ignorance
your
of the
point.
law.
That's a good point.
So once we
They need an
understand...
LLC.
Right, and I don't know if you heard of the CTA Corporate Transparency Act starts next year. If you did everything through a registered agent like a New Mexico LLC, a Nevada LLC, a Wyoming LLC, where you had anonymity and privacy, that's gone. Starting this year,
Yeah, January 1st.
yeah, if you registered at January 1st, you got 30 days to comply. Otherwise, it's a $1,000 fine, $500 a day. If you already have an existing one, by the end of the year, it's a $1,000 fine and $500 a day. So your anonymity is gone. However, if you understand private common law irrevocable trusts and registering your trust citus in another country and knowing how to operate privately, you're not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. But there's many things you have to understand. When you check that box, U.S. citizen, you're a subject.
Well, right, when we get our social security or
With-
birth certificate,
These are all
it's
called
like
minimum contacts. Using the zip code is a minimum contact. Having a driver's license, using the social security. Any benefit or privileges is a tax of the United States federal government, which is a 10-mile square of Washington, D.C. If you don't understand your jurisdiction, status, and standing, then you're subjecting yourself voluntarily all the time. Now, through threat, duress, and coercion, yes, they are going to say you need this and this, but if you don't know the law, you can't hold them accountable. There's a maxim of law that says he who leaves the battlefield first loses, and obviously the one is ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? So it's not their problem that we're ignorant of the law.
Right.
So that's the very fundamental thing. If I can bring anything here today is to instill in you, you have to learn the law.
It's a great
Well,
point.
That's very good.
That's the next one, okay?
That's the
next
very
one.
first
So who
fundamental.
teaches us that? Like,
They don't. That's
I
Right.
can,
They don't want you to know.
so we need to
You gotta know
know
the
who
rules
the
I
before
people
we do
are.
I have been down this rabbit hole. I've been,
the law?
So,
You are, so sovereignty is, there's a Supreme Court case called Yipwo versus Hopkins, and it states that sovereignty is not the subject to law, it is the author and source of law. You are the law. You are one with your Creator. You're endowed with this, you were given this great earth, and one with all that is in nature, right? But you also, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution says, no state shall infringe upon the obligation of contract, meaning, and even the 14th Amendment, or the 13th Amendment, what does it say? It's voluntary. There's voluntary servitude and involuntary servitude, right? You voluntarily subjected yourself to
you
these
agreed
codes, mandates. Oh, hey, we have these offers and benefits and privileges here in the United States. We got Social Security. You know, when they went bankrupt in 1933, they took all the backing of the dollar, it's fiat currency, as we all know, right?
I think it's a great point what you're saying, because a lot of people don't understand how to get out of this situation because they don't even comprehend the situation that they're in.
Were you
But
here
a lot
for
of-
the first event?
No.
No,
a lot of
we were
people,
talking about this.
A lot of people are coming together with what we've been doing because of the fact that they recognize that there's something wrong with what they're trapped within, right?
Well, you guys touched on everything. It's
So,
us
yeah.
as individuals having
Yes.
the
You
knowledge and wisdom.
But I do have like
You
some
got to know the
concerns.
rules to the game if you're going to play the game.
That's right.
I
And
do-
if you're going to win the game, right?
I do have some concerns though, because I know this is an open forum, so hopefully like you're okay with me.
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
So my main message, as you know, is nature is the answer.
Exactly. In private
It's
law.
quite interesting to me that somebody can go from God's law to, okay, well, this court case and this thing that was written on some piece of paper that is still just arbitrarily human whim. And I think there's a big problem with mixing truth with lies because it makes the lies more deceiving. I've known many people who have gone deep into this type of stuff. People who said, oh, I know the law, have everyone figured out, and I stopped paying taxes, and like Larkin Rose, and he went to jail, and you know, it's like he was living proof of somebody who had struggles with it. And these people are fighting the system constantly, and they're not using that time instead to educate their fellow man about statism. And the reason why the assemblies and people who share common law do not teach statism is because they still have an agenda or worldview of this is how the world should be structured. And I'm saying the world cannot be structured. If you follow the Taoist ancient Chinese wisdom or understanding statism, Dr. Carl Jung, you cannot structure and impose your will or have a way of structuring the world because that's how you create chaos. Like, it's not actually going to create order. If you say, like, this is how America is supposed to operate and it's with this law and that, you're still imposing on nature, putting it in a box what you think the world should be, and you're telling people how to live their life. Even if you say that, oh, they in that system, they consented.
So
I think you missed the point.
What would be the real problem? The real problem isn't necessarily the lack of knowledge with the agreements, right? The real problem is the morality of the collective, right? If we could raise the morality of the collective, like make people more consciously aware of what has happened to them, what they can do to get out of it, and like lay some kind of a blueprint down for them so that they can move forward with it, right? The morality of the mankind, you know, humankind around us will escalate, and the freedom will escalate along with it. Like, this is what one of my mentors talks about all the time, Mark Essie. He says, as morality increases, slavery decreases, right? So it's like, all right, so like, does it hurt me to know man's law? Like, I don't call it man's law, I actually call it man's agreements. Because that's not a law. Like, we come from endowed laws.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, that's universal. You can't get around my laws.
Well,
My laws are principles.
Let me squash it. Like I
Yeah,
said,
sure.
private law is not subject to anything. It's natural.
Right.
Private law is, that's exactly what it is.
But then you wouldn't have to call it anything, right?
Well, private means you're not subject to anything, because if you look at law, tax law is in the public side.
Right.
Constitutional law is on the public side.
Right.
On the private side, it's just interaction. Hey, you drove your car, you were drunk.
But we
you
give
came,
that away all the time.
You
with
came and busted up my
signatures
nose
and
in the little
agreements
mushrooms
and
in my front
checkboxes
yard.
and
Now, how do you
e-signatures.
handle that? Do you go subject yourself and say, I need an attorney? No. There's an administrative process you do. If you understand the law, you say, hey, look, on this day...
So there's a set way to do things.
Right.
Why can't you choose how to do it on...
the law?
Well,
So,
here's the thing: is
if you're saying there's a set
if you
structure-
wrote a letter, there is no structure. It's administratively saying is, okay, this guy drove his blue
I'm just
car.
saying not one structure. Like, it can be, like the market, for instance, if you want a product, there's many different products.
Right.
There's no monopoly on what product to take. But for instance, the U.S. Postal Service is owned by the government, so there's no competition. So I'm saying if you have one structure and you say this is how the law should be carried out, then you're basically shutting out all other forms of the law, which is just third party helping with conflict resolution.
Let me finish the story and then we'll see, because you can mold it how you want, but it's all your responsibility to say, okay, this guy damaged my property. I need a remedy, right? So you get his name, you get his information, and then you contact him. And you say, hey, John, I've assessed the value at $300. You ruined my grass and my gnomes and my mushrooms in my front yard. I just want to get them replaced. You know what I mean? And so, hey,
That would be the civilized way
pay
of doing
me,
things.
right?
In the private
So
way.
that is
But
private.
unfortunately, people
That's
are
me
not.
handling my own affairs. Say, hey, I assessed the damage. You gave me your address. I'm coming to you for remedy, for a claim. I'm making a claim. You damaged me, right? Now I have a claim against you, and now I want to settle it amicably between just two
Moral,
privately.
conscious beings.
Right.
Right.
So this is private law. This is
Unfortunately, people don't have. I give you my word, I'm going to follow through.
that's
anymore.
the problem, right?
Like
It's
you said,
morality.
it's
So
society,
if
you don't
if
have
that was the
that.
case and John was a good guy, hey, I understand what I did. I was
So
drunk.
are
I
you just
damaged
saying
your
that people
property.
can handle their conflicts in any way they want as
Yes.
long as it's still voluntary? Like
Absolutely. That's the thing. That's what private law is.
But what if
It's
you
natural.
say,
That is
say,
kind
you
of
want
a common law
300,
way.
and I say, well, no,
the common law
I
way.
so then
It's
I just
only
I just
50.
don't call it the same words you guys.
You,
just-
we, in order to comprehend, it's like, look, I know I'm not this body. I'm not a. I'm this manifested form as a man. It's just a consciousness.
I try to keep I always
Right.
when I try to put words down, I try to keep it simple because the thing is
He
too
uses
when it comes
universal and timeless techniques in his presentation.
Well, like, if you think about, like, how do we reach the youth? It's like, if you come at them with a bunch of, like, you need to know this, 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 and here's a list of things, it's like if you were
Here's
telling
all the
someone...
walls and...
Here's, like, if you're telling someone what to do with their own body nutrition-wise, and you
Do
give
no
them a list
harm.
of, do this, do this,
Right.
do this, they may even know it, but they're still not going to do it because, to me, psychology is everything. And that's why morality is very important, because it is universal and timeless. But the law is subject to change at any moment. It's arbitrary. It's just stuff people write on paper. Now, if you're saying
That's
it's
the
God's
legal
law
system.
or natural law, it's still debated because it's a general concept, and everybody's going to have different perceptions of what that is. So, to me, always the best option is, well, if everybody's always going to think differently, everybody lives their own life. So why not interact voluntarily, where people can choose how to live their own life, and they can, agree
Right,
to
but there's a
disagree.
fundamental
They can-
problem there because there's people that have to be governed. See, I think there's. I've thought about this.
No, they don't have to be governed.
I've
I'll
thought
argue
about
that
this
to the
because
day I
it's
die.
hard-
They
it's
need
how-
to have their morality
How do you
raised,
self-govern?
their knowledge raised.
How do you self-govern, right? There's people that cannot self-govern
Education.
themselves.
Education.
Education. The only
Education.
ones
It's
that
not just
can't
that, it's
really
there's people
self-govern
that
are
really
people
need
who
a
have
master.
disabilities.
Well, think of
There
it
are
like,
some
again,
people.
think of it like the market. If you want to follow somebody, you absolutely can. But just don't make other people who don't want to follow them follow.
And you don't have to.
And there
Again,
go.
you don't
But
have
then-
to register.
But
your
now you don't
business,
have a
but
government
you
because it's
voluntarily
voluntary.
do it, right?
And because government, everything is done by violence. Now you don't have a government because it's voluntary. So you can call it self-government, you can call it voluntarism, you can call it anarchism, you can call it common law, and I'm cool with that too. But I'm just saying, like, usually what's differentiated, like what I did in the presentation, is government violence. Because there's never
Right.
been a government in history that isn't backed by violence. Now, if you want to say it's not, some people will differentiate government versus the state. Right? I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's all just terminology games. And I try to just get it really simple to people. Is like, this is just the intent, the context.
I get where you're
something.
coming from, but it's difficult when you got a complex world, when we're already subjected ourselves to all these things. We have to step it down in steps
Right.
because you can't just stop paying taxes if you don't know the
yeah,
law.
but
I
we
think
still
you
have
can
to
if you
listen to all
understand
these
who you are.
sides to help us get there.
Right.
It took us years before I didn't want to go and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Right.
So it took a while, but it's steps. And
It's
I needed
steps.
everyone
Yeah.
in different aspects, his aspect,
Yeah.
her aspect, her aspect,
Yeah.
to tell me all these things.
know what
So
to-
I kind of need...
It's about
Yeah.
education, and
Well, that's why we
really
bring
when
this
when
together,
you
yeah.
start
Yeah.
looking at what all is wrong, and then educating yourself in regards to that particular law, or why is pledging allegiance to a flag wrong? Breaking it down so that you can understand it psychologically and morally, okay? Because by you pledging allegiance to a flag, you're pledging allegiance to a deity, a God, kind of. Take a look at it that way, okay? And
It's just a thing.
it's just a thing. But that thing became your God
I know.
because you're just so been indoctrinated into it
My goal is not to teach someone something new.
Yeah, and,
Like,
well, there isn't anything
morality,
necessarily
nothing
new.
new.
I mean, even Solomon said that there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
There's nothing new
I'll
under the
just
sun.
throw in there this one little tidbit, right? And it's been my experience, okay? So I've worked in rehabs and psychiatric hospitals, and I've helped thousands of people. Bobby's one of my bestest friends in the entire world. He's witnessed a lot of it go on over the years. And the way I was able to do that was by being a lighthouse to them. I've been where you're at. I know what you're going through. I can relate to it. Maybe it's not the exact same story, but your pain and suffering was my pain and suffering at one time. And this is how I've overcome it. This is how I've beat those obstacles. This is how I've moved forward with my healing process, with my recovery process, with my growth process. This is how I've demonstrated love and caring, right? And like by being that lighthouse, that example, I was able to help those people, but also that's what I look for in others. Okay, so if your trade is to sell goods and wares here that are holistically inducing a better lifestyle, healthy lifestyle choice for people, then I'm going to turn to her as my lighthouse today and say, hey, just like Henry Ford back in the 50s when they were trying to say that he was a monopoly or whatever within man's laws and congresses, and they said, well, he said, well, what does it pay me to know all those informations if I have 12 phones on my desk and I can call the person that's the expert or the one that's skilled and talented at that vice or that knowledge or that remedy, and they can do it. So I would rather turn to her and say, what's the best way to deal with this raw milk situation? What's the best soap to use? What's the best liver cleanse to use, right? And she can answer that for me. But if he were to come to me and say, hey, John, what's the best raw milk to use? I would be like, here's Moonberry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way it's always been for me. My experience has been.
Well, we all have our skills.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why we've come together with this.
Right.
With
This is why we use all of our skills.
Networking.
And all of,
Yeah,
everything that has to do
Yeah,
with
I'm
it.
surprised I don't have anything to hear about the market, but I mean, if you think about it, right, the market is the real government of this world. It governs, if somebody wants something, there's supply and there's demand. So, like, that's the way I look at it, and that's basically what he's saying. If there's somebody who wants something, like if you want a road, a flat surface to drive on, there will be a road. People are like, well, how could there be roads without everybody being stolen from? Guarantee theft to prevent possible theft. It's like, okay, so you want everybody to be stolen from so you can prevent possible problems. And then if you look at the people who are the most criminal, it's the people who are politicians, and it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. And they seek power. Psychopaths seek power. Sociopaths seek power. So us creating the seat of power to say somebody can sit here, like, I'll furnish it for you and everything. It's like, yeah, they're going to be like, I'll take it. Because average people, if I asked one of you guys, would you guys want to be a ruler? Most people, average person is not going to say, yeah, I want to do that. It's like, no, it's stressful, it's too much. Like,
Damnably sword hanging over your head. Like, what is a sword hanging by a string?
And yet we are allowing that. It's just, so for me, it's like this basic human understanding that is so like extra simplistic, overly simplistic on purpose. Like everybody's just a human being, and that's it. And so then there's people like in the assemblies who argue with me and they're like, you can't say the word human, you have to say man or woman. Or you can't say the word individual, you say man or woman. And it's because of the law and because of common law and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, but you understand the context, the intent of what I'm saying. See, because if you want to get into more divisions, I don't think that's the way we go, is get into the word games. I think we really connect with our fellow humankind. We connect to them heart to heart. The abolitionists weren't back then saying, look at this system and the fraud and all the common law and natural law. No, they were like, let's end slavery. This is a practice. This is an action. Morality in action. Right? So that's like different.
All that stuff.
There's many ways to express morality. There's many philosophical codes to express morality, but morality is just actions at the end of the day. So, yeah, there's nothing really left here, but here's a quote. If you guys want me, I could finish up, and then we can have a whole conversation about some of the strategies. I have a notepad, too, over there. As soon as people clearly understand that, statism he's referring to here, they will naturally cease to take part in such deeds, i.e. cease to give the government soldiers and money, and as soon as a majority of people ceases to do this, the fraud which enslaves people will be abolished. Only in this way can people be freed from slavery. That's from his book, Slavery of Our Times, talking about the modern slavery which again is referred to as the government. Now, Lysander Spooner said that too as an abolitionist. He said, if you keep giving the government money, then they're just going to hire more soldiers to get more money from you. And then the cycle just continues and continues and continues because they're just paying off people to keep their paycheck. So it's kind of like a really like feedback loop that they have us in, where it's like, oh, you want to cause a division, divide and conquer. They create these scenarios where you want to be dependent. And Carl Jung talks about this in this book too, saying that they create these scenarios and you end up actually being more dependent, not less. So like when there's people who are anti-mask, it actually causes more people to be more political because now everything becomes politicized just by talking about anti-mask versus pro-mask, even though we might fall into that discussion, and now overall increases the tyranny in the world. So like this is like insane just because we're not looking at the root cause. And as a psychologist, he can see that, and I thought his works is like really in detail for that. So my message is just empower the people directly, and do not empower authority. If it's we the people, it's we the people. We have to realize that government or the state can only steal and not create. Everybody thinks it helps create things, but it's taking our money to do it. It's taking what already exists to do it. It's not producing a service. It's not creating anything new. It's only taking what already is and transferring the resources. It can only violate and not protect. It's soldiers, and those are just people helping other people. Anyone else with a gun can do the same thing and defend someone else. They don't have to be an authority to do that. Anyone can hire security agents, private security, defense agencies. There's 100 different ways to do it. We even have security cameras and technology now, right? But every government in history has never protected rights or just done that. Everybody claims it can, but it's never done that in history. And so we also have to realize it creates authority in man, which is the main thing. And then there's for action. So I have one page for knowledge, one page for action. So everything I said here is also summarized on this page. Now if you go to the main website, deliberator.us, I have a basically a one-stop hub for everything. Like literally there's an activism section, events section. If you want to share an article, please, if you're also like really intelligent and you know a lot of stuff. Sure. I want to welcome everybody to...
It's all inclusive.
Yes.
That's the main
If
thing.
you have a message to share, I will turn your article into a video for you.
If
I
you
will network
notice,
with you. I will help you with content creation. It's all there.
If you guys noticed during Cory's discussion and my discussion, like we've been all inclusive in everything that we've done. We've talked about Russia. We've talked about Buddha. We talked about Jesus Christ. We talked about, states. We talked about governments. We talked about the mafia. You know what I mean? Like, it's drug addiction.
Yeah,
We're talking about
share,
a lot
yeah.
of different,
So I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think we can live together without governing body?
Well, like if you mean like people coming together, there's always going to be organization and business, like I said. But there's not going to be government as in violence. And I see this as
Not
inevitable.
a government, but governing body. No matter we have a community of 1,000 people, there will have to be a leader.
Authority.
Is it voluntary?
Yeah, it's just
Government is most likely...
a leader. We call them leaders.
Leaders,
instead of,
okay, but-
instead of authority.
But for
I like the
example,
word facilitator. I work
600 people
with
like your leader and 400 do not.
Right. Then
So-
those 400
That's
do
why
not
you have to still have it, because you still need an enforcement arm, because
Yes,
not
there's
everyone
always
is going to be peaceful, loving,
Yeah,
caring.
well, that's why you have, again,
and-
self-defense and the defense agencies and
Yes.
private security. So what would be the point of that if you said we have to have a centralized system that everybody must be stolen from in order to create? And now
No,
you're
we
creating a
don't want
monopoly
stolen
on
from,
violence.
but if there is a man or a woman who's causing another man or woman harm, and they're not willing to make that man or woman whole again, then there has to be a penalty system
That
Somebody
for
who enforces it.
well, the community.
that
Community.
is.
That's the
I think
very
of the
community.
Amish, right?
Right.
They will
Shun.
they'll say you're shunned from this community.
And that's the same thing for your business, right? Like you own this property. If you don't want to own the property, you can choose what to do with it.
Right.
So,
It has to be the
like, there's
collective
always
act.
going to be rules. I'm saying that there's not one set of rules that everyone must
Has to
follow. So,
abide,
like,
right.
I'm not saying there should be a centralized military or a centralized police force. I'm saying there's going to be hundreds of thousands of solutions. In fact, they'd be all competing. In that you would actually have people wanting to do good rather than as the system that we have now where it's corruption because it's only one system that is imposed on everyone. And
Well,
that's why
it's-
people...
It's tricky when you're trying to live in these smaller communities when you're surrounded by the chaos of this bigger, town that we're living in. I could see where,
It's imbalance. You got the majorities under the public
yeah,
government rule, and they're not
right.
there yet. And you got this community of people that are
Exactly.
trying to live voluntarily and out without rules.
I would say
Right.
everybody lives voluntarily. 99%, everybody in the world lives voluntarily.
But
And it's just that small exception which they give to government, which actually causes a big.
Well, I mean, let me ask
difference
you a
in
question.
history.
Who here has a driver's license?
We all do.
Who here has a social security number?
We all do.
That's our parents' fault.
Yes, but see,
Right.
but see,
Well, it's not their fault. They were misled.
I know,
too.
They were
but I'm
misled.
not
This
blaming
is where
them.
we're at.
And
I don't
my
wanna
point
blame
is that I love what you're saying, because yes, that's where we want to get to. But my point is we have to undo all the things that we've already subjected ourselves to before we can get there, and we have to understand
I
the
think it's all
law.
mentally. All.
Well, it is, but we still subject
but how do
ourselves
we
because
undo
that
it?
guy with the colors.
Asking questions. Socratic method, the candles in the dark method, what I shared before.
Everybody's guilty of it. That's why you
This
stop
is-
at a
yeah.
stop sign in the middle of the night when
This-
there's
But
no
that's
road.
yeah, right.
These three. This right here. That's the method.
No,
But
this
see
is
how
not
many
even true.
people.
Like, okay, we got to the assembly after we got through him, so we might have did it backwards because we went further ahead before we went
Well,
backwards.
I've been through the whole
But-
assembly thing. I'll
yeah.
tell you that. I've been through the whole assembly
No,
thing and all
but-
that.
yeah.
But when you get a little further, you understand that you, right?
Mhm.
You have to go past that.
No, and he wants everybody to go past that.
Right.
Because he doesn't like the paperwork.
Yeah, and I know where he's going. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he's
get it.
like, I
So,
would
but
love-
you do have to put them on notice because they're already assuming that you're a subject because
Right.
you've already checked the box U.S. citizen.
Right.
You've got all the minimum contacts.
Right.
You have to put them on notice that, hey, wait a minute, I became conscious, because if not, you can't just go around and do things because you've got all the minimum contacts.
So do you have a
You're
driver's
using the
license?
benefits. Yes, but I've already signed it. I've signed it
You-
and
you-
reserved
you
my right.
signed it their way.
I reserved. No, I
No,
I
he
did
res-
it
he
to reserve
reserved
my
his
right.
rights.
So.
So he
That's
signed with
another
his
way.
That's a
byline.
contract.
Oh, you just
agree.
signed
Oh,
it
you're
with
still
the
the
byline.
byline. Yeah.
Okay, but
You own it.
Right.
But you still had to say, in order to get past their system, how did you say you're not a citizen? Because they do not let you pass.
Well, see here, it's a process, right? So I've already drove without the tag. I didn't have insurance. I did all that stuff, but I said, you know what? You can't argue with the guy on the side of the road. He's
Right.
just doing his job, and he's under color of it's all color of office,
Right.
color of law, because there's no money. That's why it's colorable.
Right,
There's no nation because there's no money.
right.
The Federal Reserve note is a promissory note. We know it's debt instruments, right? So since there's no money,
Yeah.
there's no law.
It's just
It's
over.
color of law, and it's a colorable jurisdiction.
We are in the recovery process of our freedom, okay?
By
And
the
when
way,
I,
this
when I
is
talk about
suspended.
recovery, I get a little emotional.
Sorry, Joe.
That's all right. I get a little emotional when I talk about recovery because we are in the recovery process of our freedom, of our rights, okay? So it doesn't have to be like people that come straight out of a rehab, they want to have a house, they want to have a car, they want to have their family back, they want to have their children back in their life. Well, they're not ready for all that stuff, right? But they don't know that. They want that, but they
Takes
don't know
time and
that.
a process.
So this is a process, right? So I don't have all the answers to how to be a free man today, unfortunately. But I know that by using my core value of caring about that issue and working towards gaining the knowledge that I'm going to die free. I promise you I'm going to die free. I'm going to die trying to be free. So I'm working on stepping out of the system based on the stuff that Carmen and people that have been involved with the assembly movement have presented to me, right? I'm working on getting more naturally inclined with a holistic care system for myself, right? But it's a baby process. It's like one foot in front of the other the entire way. What you have to do is you have to set a structure for yourself, set a recovery freedom plan for yourself. You want to have,
Not for
in
others.
5 years, you want to be in a trust system. You want to be outside of the system. When they come banging on your gate, you have your own food, you have your own energy, you have your own family, school systems. Like, you don't have to answer to them for any reasons. I'm 48 years old. That's 45 years of doing it their way. You think it's going to be undone in 3 years?
Yeah, no.
I mean, seriously. It's not going to happen like that. And if you think it's going to happen like that, you're going about it the wrong way. He advertised this on Eventbrite and in our Telegram groups and a couple of the social medias, right? I mean, hundreds, maybe thousands of people might have seen it, right? Who's sitting in this room right now? Right, this is what I'm talking about, guys. What we want to know from you guys is how do we proceed? How do we go forward from here, right? What kind of skill sets and knowledge do you personally have in your arsenal that you can add to our collective, right? So that we can move forward together. Because I'm still in recovery. It ain't from drugs and alcohol or criminal lifestyle choices anymore. But I'm in a different kind of recovery today. And when I die, I'm going to look at Creator in the eyes, Source, whatever you want to call him, that's or her, or whatever, that's fine. I'm going to look them in the eyes and say, I did my best to become a free man. Right? I want my daughter to know that I struggled and fought to become free with nonviolent actions. Right? So, like, I want to know from you guys, like, I have a select set of skills. I'm technologically inclined, okay? I can talk, obviously.
Really?
If I have like the knowledge base of what I'm talking about, then I'm like on fire. But if I'm a little like shaky,
Yeah,
you know,
I can go over some of the
yeah,
ideas.
yeah. So let's
get your
let's
feedback.
brainstorm, guys. Like, what do we do next? How do we make this movement of freedom an actual reality for our families, for our neighbors, for our customers, our clients? How do we do it?
There's a lot of people that couldn't show up tonight, but there's a lot of people, like I said, in Telegram, we have over 100, and our first event was out the door, packed here, which was amazing. I didn't expect that for the first event.
No, me neither.
And I knew that this event, holiday season, busyness,
Yeah, we had like
rain,
100 people at a,
but it's nice to see that like this is
like
the core
50
group right now.
people. And then, we did the Freedom event.
Yeah, we did it
Jimmy
at different
the other day.
locations too. We did the movie screening
well,
at like
nursery.
a farm in Odessa. And then we did one 3 hours from here, which we don't expect any of you guys to come to that.
Right, so we're moving around. We're trying to get
everybody
collective,
together.
The more people we have involved with what we're trying to do, the more powerful our movement can be, right? And like I said, these are the core values of what me and him are standing behind. I can't say that I know exactly how to put seeds into the ground, but I'm down there trying to do it.
Well,
right?
I need to see what the possibility is. Like,
That's-
I
if
don't
you want to
even know
know-
what's possible.
These are the answers that I would say are the actions. But I don't say there is one action. I don't say there is a way you have to approach it. I don't say people have to do a certain thing, because our very message is do not tell others what to do with their own lives.
Right, but
so when we tell others what to do with their own lives, so we can say not to tell others what to do with their own lives, we have to be careful. That's all I'm saying, because there is psychology problems in our own movement that we do not see. And this is why these 3 steps to me matter the most, because these are not projecting, these are psychological, and they get right to the root cause. And I will argue that to my death. I have no problem with it. I've written books about it. I think it's really important because no one is really addressing statism or that root cause. And I really truly think that's the problem, but it's only a problem because it is detailing the nature of problems. Like, a problem gets worse when a lot of people support that problem.
A few people started talking about the driver's license issue, and there are several people who've done a whole different way of doing this, and the rest of us, if we wanted to do this,
We're
as
gonna have
one
other words
step,
for that.
you have to know again legally how and what, and if you do X, what happens next, or if you are stopped, what to do, how to answer.
Yeah, that's
The
a whole different thing. We've
that's
done that with
what
our
I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So it's like if you are stopped by an officer, if you're in court and they ask you, do you understand? Which actually means, do you understand? Do you stand under this law?
Right.
It's not, do you comprehend what I'm telling you? So I mean,
It's
there's
an
so much that.
I know, and it's all arbitrary, just whim based. Even if like you can come up with the best argument of like this is how I should say it, it's all just words. Like, it's word games. I just don't want to participate
It's
in that
word
game.
magic is what they do. It's all legally
Source
right.
and that is what
I heard the words around.
all of us don't want to be in it, and you're like at the pinnacle. Like, we want to get to the pinnacle, but
I don't think there's a process, because
well,
the
there-
minute you start
there's
concerning yourself about it, you
There-
get
there's
very
an
complex
undoing.
and it gets too clouded.
And
I think
times
we have to
change,
be-
though. We're in a different time than all the gentlemen you're talking about. Just like if we think of the days of the Westerns, right? When, everybody had the will. Two guys could shoot it out in the middle of the street. Sheriff, hey, these 2 men, they hate each other. Fine, shoot it out. We'll pick them up, throw them in the
It's
back
their
of the thing,
choice.
and they'll off.
They're choosing to
And if there
resolve
was-
their situation that way.
And something happened, they say,
Free
John
will.
Jones, you've been put on notice. They would put the notice out there.
There's,
Yeah,
hold on,
right.
there's one
They post
factor
the
that,
notice.
that
It's
a
different
lot of people
times.
won't take in consideration, and that's that people have the capacity of change. I've witnessed hundreds, if not thousands, of people change their lives, change their mentalities, change their behaviors, change their interactions with others. I've seen it with my own eyes, guys. Just because today they're out there paying tickets and pulling out driver's license and still signing contracts and getting energy from the government or the corporate systems or whatever, just because that stuff is going on today right now, doesn't mean it's going to go on 2-3 years from now. That system is failing. We all know it. That's why we're standing here and sitting in this room, because we know that that's not going to work too much longer. And we have to protect our interests. As humans, we have to protect our families. We have to protect our children. We have to protect our property, our animals. I care about my plants.
Should we? You want to talk about the plantation idea that you?
He had a question, Cory.
Since it's on topic.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Wait. If he has a question, should we go first?
Yeah.
Well,
let's do the
I
question.
was just going to make a comment. I thought you mentioned that we have to hit a critical mass, and I tend to agree with that. And that a lot of the people and the young people think that they're free, and they're not really free.
Yes.
The wealth has been stolen from us because we are the ones that do all the work, and yet we don't get that much because they're stealing using the money system, and they own everything now.
Every level, right.
And they want it to, and this is the important part, and you have to know somebody pretty well before you can talk to them like this. They want us to have less and less and less freedom until there's only 500 million people and they're total slaves. That's where they're driving us. So they better, this is to the new person that you're talking to, they better start to learn about some of these concepts.
Yes.
Because you really are going to be a slave.
Yeah. So what makes people? What makes people willing to learn something new?
Yes.
A lot of times, it's the negative consequences that they're experiencing.
It's the
How
harm
many
they've
people in this room lost a crucial amount of their wealth as a result of what's been going on in the past couple of years? You know, like I'm not just talking about financial. I mean, like your health, all these different
They'll
things
be
that have been
looking for
impacted.
us.
There are people that
People
fell
will be
victim
looking
to
for us.
their agendas and what they've been doing. Like, and I don't want to make this about all that because I know some people have mixed opinions. But what I'm saying is, like, they lost something. Like, we're constantly losing and losing. But the more aware that we come, the more awareness that we have, and the more forthright we are with where we're at. Like, my consequences are too great. What made me change my lifestyle was because I wasn't willing to pay those consequences anymore. Jail and death and being in and out of rehabs and hurting my mother and making her cry herself to sleep at night, that was not a lifestyle I wanted to live anymore. Something had to change. But it started with the acceptance of my situation and then, like, one foot in front of the other, walking the path to make it happen, right? Knowledge. Knowledge is key. I don't know it all. If Bobby, tell him, if I think I know it all, somebody needs to smack me because I don't know it all.
You don't know it all.
The three ways that I work right now, if I strike up a conversation with a total stranger, and I'll never see him again probably, I got a 1 penny handout to give to him. Okay?
Sure.
Right,
That's awesome.
I call it an executive summary of what's going on in the world. And,
That's great.
And
there's
even
a
if
lot
they
of
think we're a
websites
little
on
nuts,
there.
some go in, some go in, some go
And
in.
you're gonna be a
Earth's flat
slave.
Earth, right?
And this is where they're driving us to, okay? And they're very patient. They got Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. And
Yeah,
they-
they're
Working on
walking
this
their
agenda
line.
for
I
over
prefer to ask
160 years.
That's the total stranger.
Tab.
You know, in my community, I'm getting more active now, so I'm making new friends. I don't bring this stuff up right away. I've learned it doesn't work.
You have to meet
I
people
have
where
to
they're
become
at.
friends
Always.
first,
Right.
and then feed them. Okay, that's the second way that I work. So I have the handout, but I don't use that if I'm developing a new friend right away. The third way is I have a meetup site, and we have events like this
Right.
where we can
Yeah,
get
discuss.
together. We're at different levels.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. And what we
That's
have
really
to
good.
we have
we
to
can go out
accept
of
the
here
fact.
and we can all do similar.
We have to accept the fact,
like
just
that.
as she was saying, we have to accept the fact that that system's going to exist for quite a while still. Okay, it's going to change, it's going to manipulate, it's going to manifest, it's going to deceive, and it's going to still operate outside of what we're trying to do, right? So, like, when we come together and we try to do this, it's going to be a process, it's going to be an ongoing process, but, you know, like, it's capable of being done. We have the ability to create environments that is not impacted by their decisions with their system. Right? They're a separate entity from what we're trying to do. Right?
Do you want to share these ideas now?
Well,
Yeah, so
one last thing is, is we have to develop systems. It would be good if, because the digital currency, and they do away with cash, that's terrifying.
It's coming soon.
Because they will have complete control.
These are, yeah, they're all
They can take your
ratables.
ability to buy food away.
Wait, you're not gonna get a chip?
So,
Yeah, you're not getting your
Nobody's
chip.
getting a chip?
You're not getting your
Yeah.
chip.
This is why we have
So,
events on
but
just
the digital
one topic.
currency may come
I'm not signing up for
sooner
that
than
program.
later. They're really working on that. So get a little bit of silver.
Yeah.
Right.
Get
We might, by the way,
$100
we
worth
might,
of
we're
silver.
thinking maybe of doing an event
Become
in January
knowledgeable about
on
silver.
that.
Yeah,
Would you guys
we
want
should
maybe
do
an
a thing.
event in January on silver
Yeah,
and
we're
gold?
gonna
January we'll
an
do it.
event
You know,
on
last
that.
time we did food
Yeah.
forest, and the time before that we did the common law stuff. So like,
Invite your friend who knows a lot about
Yes.
it.
yeah,
Mike,
Anybody
we'll
who's,
have that here.
it's so easy. All
It
it
is
is
easy.
is
It is
coins,
easy.
okay?
I was scared too, and then
Well, it's a way to identify
people
a
think
problem
it's
that a
short
lot
term.
of us may not
They
even
won't give
know
up.
And then
is
try,
a problem.
and then
that's
try
my
to
point.
use it.
Like,
I will hire
I
people.
remember that.
I don't work,
Yeah, it's good.
but if I did work, I would let them pay me in silver and gold. And when I hire people, or my haircut, I pay silver. And I had a handyman do some work. You know, you got to agree ahead of time. Is it?
Sure.
Do
Or you
they
barter.
agree or receive the silver? And sometimes they love it. Okay.
And you're actually bringing awareness to
And
it by
I
doing
pay it,
Yeah.
and it's at the retail price.
That's- yeah,
So if
that's
I spend $200 worth of silver money, I can just go to the shop and I spend it at retail. I can get more at retail.
Right.
Who's it, the banana thing?
So we have some ideas, right? Me and Cory have talked about a few things. One of the things is bringing this information and as the other collective people that are in our fold, right? Bringing that information to others, right? And we talked about going to universities and talking to kids, right?
Yeah.
Talking to the younger generation.
We're
right?
goofy sometimes.
Yeah,
so
we're a little
we
goofy.
can definitely do
Listen, the
I think
the
that's a
genres
great
that I
idea, 'cause
talk in
the
and
the
speak
young
to
ones are not getting this information.
that. No,
so.
we will.
are
I know
all
how to
over the
reach young-
board. I talk to
I was one
people,
of them.
everything from mental health and drug addiction, all the way to, you know, I mentioned I had a near-death experience in spirituality. I talk about those kind of things with people. I don't want to do it on a universal, like, all-inclusive group level because, you know, some of it is my personal beliefs. And I shouldn't be imposing my beliefs on you, but I do tarot cards, you know, I talk about my near-death experience, like, no heartbeat, no brain activity, and things happened. I was there, I'm the witness, it's my experience, right? Not once, but twice. I've experienced the system on levels I don't even want to talk about. And then I've experienced it on the other side, working for the system, and like, you know, while they're holding somebody down and injecting them because the way that they're behaving and acting against their will, they're being injected with poisons, you know, because they're in a psychiatric hospital. Now, I had to deal with those kind of things. I had to come to certain conclusions about what I was involved with. And the last straw for me was, well, now you got to put something in your body. I said, well, that's not going to happen. My daughter is a victim of vaccination injury. She's 19 years old. She suffers from respiratory illnesses. It's a direct result of the poison that they put in her. I didn't know that as a parent at the time. I took her to the Florida Department of whatever, you know, when I was living down here with her. And, you know, they said, well, she's behind on her vaccine, and they did their thing. And, you know, I went home and I thought I was a good parent. And then the next day she's turning blue and she's got 106 fever. She's dying and she's in the tub. And I got ice cubes on top of her and I'm panicking as a parent. Like, I don't want to live in that kind of fear.
That's where the authority dynamic plays into medicine as well, by the way. I have a medical project
so
I'm working on with people.
What disclosed my fear? Reading the book by Robert Kennedy about the vaccinations. Like, oh, there is science that contradicts what the government says and what the medical fields say, right? And when I learned these type of things, I said, man, like, why doesn't people know this stuff? They don't know because nobody's telling it to them, right? Nobody's telling it to you guys.
It's not even an option.
Nobody's
they don't even know
telling
it's
it to us,
available.
right?
Like,
So I
people
want to
don't
go
even
to
know
I want to
that
go
there's
to
an
a
alternative
university. He
view.
wants to go to universities. We want to talk to kids.
Just
We
to
want to talk about
inspire.
topics.
That's it.
that-
Inspire and power. Like, it's not about, oh, we have an agenda, we have something to share, we
Right.
gotta tell everybody this is what they must know. The world's gonna end, we're gonna turn to zombies, and they're all gonna take over. Like, no,
Right.
that's not
Well,
the
we
message. The
like
message
what
is
we've seen.
you are cool, you're a young person, you're energetic, you have something to bring to the world, you have a passion, you have an interest.
You have a
we
talent,
are
a
interested in
skill.
what you have, rather than we telling you what to think. And that's
You have
the
a level
whole
of
message.
creativity.
That's
You
the
have a
whole
level
message.
of imagination, and we want to bring that into the fold and utilize it to the best ability for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of our collective, right?
And then-
So, like,
yeah.
if any of you guys think that you have some kind of a select skill or talent, and you want to get involved with us when we go to the university. We don't want to just be the only two people standing in front of people talking about things. We want you to come out and tell us how you did your by reserved rights. We want you to come out and tell us how there is a collective that we can have that could actually work, that operates outside of that system with our own trust, where we're standing on our land, and like we can interact with that system if we want to, but guess what? We don't need to, right? Yeah. That's what I want to be able to do, guys. And I think everybody in this room kind of feels that way in a lot of ways. You know, and if you don't, that's fine too. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But like, let's go, let's bring it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm ready.
Yeah, the biggest problem with the younger generation is, I call it the Coliseum effect. They give you something shiny to look at, and a lot of the younger kids, they're not willing to give up any of them type of luxuries or sacrifice them. They're only worried about the right now, not the long term.
Yeah, but they were trained into the system, like
it's
one
all
of us were,
indoctrination from public school.
and they are younger, so they haven't gone through as many years of conditioning. So I can definitely work with that, okay? Because again, I mean, I went through crying
they're told they can be anything and they know everything.
So
I was very deeply, by the way, obedient status mentality all the way. I mean, I held open the doors at the polls in 2016 when I was supporting Trump. I just water bottle. He claims that he worked with them, like, you know, we were all in it, right? I was very obedient to my parents. I've always been a very moral person. I've always believed in morals, but I never applied it to politics. I never questioned the underlying fabrics, the psychology, the philosophy. I was just looking at, the laws, and I had a very typical, like, Republican stance of, we need to bring back our Constitution, restore our rights.
So you think it's wrong that you just blindly followed your parents and what they said?
No. I'm saying that they taught me basic morals, and I was very obedient, which a lot of kids are, right? And it's good to be obedient to your parents when you are growing up, because you don't know much about the world. But as you develop your own reason over time, then you can start to think for yourself, and you can understand, more of your own mind and how you think.
The young lady in the back had a question. Go ahead.
My thing is, we have to build a parallel system.
Yes.
It's going to be super complex. Right. You have to do food. You have to do energy. You have to do medical. Medical is a real problem. I have a car accident tomorrow. I cut off my leg. I've got to go to the ER. I don't agree with a lot of what's being done in the hospital.
Right.
I lose a lot of my rights when I'm there. They're still asking you the damn COVID questions. They want to know if you're vaccinated or not. They will try to kill you.
They make you feel less than if you say no to any of their agendas or requirements.
We got to create the systems that are the solution.
We have to create that system, so that requires education. It requires money.
Yes.
So how is it going to be funded?
This is perfect for what we have to cover. I want to share that when you're ready. When you're ready, I want to share that. Are you ready now?
What I have is real.
Okay, so this is the biggest idea, right?
Well, first off, let us just tell you where we got it from. We are in the process of watching someone else do it. I want to put me and my family and my friends and my community into a situation. I have a very good relationship with all my neighbors, but it's not an intentional neighborhood. It would be nice if it was an intentional neighborhood. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a collective of people that are like, well, like this person over here helps to grow the food, this person over here helps to do the energy. And you're right, ma'am, it does take money. Right? So, like, what are we talking about? We have a friend named Jim Gale, and if some of you guys aren't familiar with him, that's fine, but you can look him up. His name's Jim Gale, and it's Food Forest Abundance. Now, it took a lot of money for him to do what he's doing right now.
Like millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars.
He's a billionaire.
Well, he's got investors.
He was broke before he did that, and he built his entire food forest on sand.
And this was only a few years ago.
Can't do that.
Right, but it is possible. We understand that it is possible.
Right.
Even though we can't afford to do it, we know it's possible. So maybe we're not doing 50 acres. Maybe we're doing 10 acres.
The one thing I don't want to hear, by the way, is that it's not possible for changing the world, for the process of changing the world.
Crowdsourcing, GoFundMe, all these different things that exist.
I can maybe do it on the
On a
small
smaller
scale.
scale. If you're doing
and I
it,
have 47 plants growing in my backyard.
Well, no, you put like 10 people together. Put 10 people together. That's how you create that same thing. But it's just 10 of you coming together to do it all.
Courage.
And we're not saying we want you to come live on our freedom farm, right? We want you to have the knowledge and
hold
the
on.
option.
She thinks he had money.
Then he was in debt.
Right, but then he got investors. And if I'm telling you within 3 years, It
not
is
even a year.
super
It
took
fast.
off.
So
It
don't
took
think
off.
that it's not possible. He had rich people help him.
So
that's
anyways,
what they're
we're
doing.
gonna do it here.
getting rich
Look at,
people.
listen to this.
What
Listen.
we're
We're gonna do
trying
it
to
here.
say is there are multiple systems that all require, first of all, organization to decide which system. Medical, educational, etc.
Well, let's start with the basis. You're exactly right.
worry
Let's
too
start
much.
with the basis.
People worry too much,
Food
but
first,
it's
without
really
food.
simple.
Right.
Food and water are first.
Thank
Ask
you.
Jim.
Food
I can give
first.
you guys
You don't have food and the water.
every Wednesday there is a
Food and water.
Zoom. Our assembly medical guy who's a holistic doctor.
It's not
He
not like
puts
I'm
a
making
1
it
hour
We're not making
little
it
presentation
down, right?
every
Maybe one day. Not yet.
Wednesday. And I
But
can
it's
share
something
that
close.
information with you guys. So at least you can start hearing other things to make yourself healthy or to avoid certain things or to take certain things.
No, that
That's
ain't no
not-
help.
She's
Depending
talking
on
about
your
more like the
condition.
big
We
stuff.
need a system.
Yeah.
Right.
The hospitals
With the
are
hospitals,
corrupt.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's all about money. They don't care about the patient. I mean, they kill people.
Even the
Correct.
nurses.
But the whole thing is like whenever you have an accident, you broke your arm, you broke your leg, okay? You have to go to a hospital for that, right? So right now there isn't a system. It needs to be developed and created, okay? But you have to go there to get treatment. So
But do you
the whole
really
thing
find
is
that
to
they're not
deny
lying to you? I mean, I
and
know-
not give away
You
your
wanna
rights
know the
when you're
stories.
there.
I'm a nurse.
And just force them to
And
give you
I know that they've
the
killed
service.
Just,
So-
just set
They hold
the
it on your
brake
head,
and
you want
that's
the job,
it.
you
Yeah,
get a shot.
remdesivir
Put the
kills
cast
you.
on.
Yeah.
There is a way
shot,
for
50%
you not
death.
even to sign anything at that hospital.
So,
Because you signing is what makes
so
you
as
liable.
complicated as fixing a broken leg
can't read
is,
it all.
or cauterizing a life-threatening wound, right? That we think only a hospital can do, right? As complicated as those type of things are, we need people with certain skill sets to do that. What would attract somebody that has those type of skill sets to a community or an environment that we're trying to create? How about having a successful environment of self-sustaining energy, self-sustaining food? Like, if I was a doctor and I was a multi-millionaire plastic surgeon or, you know, somebody that healed broken bones, I might be more susceptible
sure we
to
could
getting
get
involved
clinics
with people
going
that,
for things
you
like
know,
that.
are running their own, you know, Freedom Farm Academy.
start
Or,
with small
and I'm not
business.
saying that's exactly what we're going to do, but what I'm saying is
something
that
like
if we could start on very basic levels of like planting seeds into the ground and like organizing collectives where like you might not want to live with me, right? You might not like the type of music I listen to, or you know, you might not like the smell of the sage that comes from my end of the homestead, let's say, right? But here's the thing, right? The more we create these kind of environments and these kind of gatherings, the more we try to educate each other on the processes of getting out of the system and the processes of how to stay out of the system, right?
So-
and these kind of things, like the more we do that, the more likely we are
Okay, let me
going
get to it.
Yeah.
Get to it. I'm just
Yeah,
go.
I got it.
Okay.
It is getting late.
It's getting late,
Got
man.
it. Dad's over there tapping his watch.
So,
6:24.
like Cameron, Jim Gale's team, they warned me. They said if you're going to share this stuff with people, expect negativity. Expect people to be like, you can't do it, because that's exactly what they faced.
Right.
So
And
like,
they're doing
I
it.
don't want to
So
hear
quick.
from you guys that much. And I
Guarantee you,
expect
if Jim
it.
asks
But
for-
if you, what he said, Jim Gale said, the most important thing is faith and courage.
Corey,
Courage.
if Jim asks for a doctor and a little in a little hospital, he'd have it.
Right.
Because he's that strong already within 3 years. So
Yes,
I think
and-
we can do it.
And
pretty
his
quick
mother
if
has
he has the
cancer. He's
backing.
giving her stuff that he's
Which-
growing on the land.
And we're not just
Well-
standing here saying we need people to invest in our community. That's not what we're saying.
But you
The
can.
investment, that, yeah, of course. But
If you
the
want
investment that we're talking
If we
about
truly
is
believed in natural law,
actually-
we would get rid of money. It would be a bargaining
Right.
system.
Yeah.
The
And it's
surgeon
funny
would
that
do
you're saying that
surgery.
because
Yeah.
a lot of the
Without
Telegram groups
inspecting.
that we're involved with are cooperative or bartering communities.
Yeah,
Right?
so-
You can do
So
it. You
this
can
is
do
all
that.
part of it.
This
Like,
this is all
but-
part of this one idea.
Yeah.
So the one idea is we get a piece of land around here. Now Jim Gale and their team, they want to have several locations. And when we have several locations, from there it can grow like wildfire. Plot of land, right? And I want to have an investors type of call on Zoom after this event. I told Jim after the 10th, this event, when I shared with you guys, that we would get together and we would do a sort of a Zoom call where we discuss the plans. Now, I have a sort of vision in my head, because this is how Jim went in with his plot of land. He had a vision. Okay, this vision entails encapsulating everything that I see as missing in today's society. I truly mean that. I'm not saying necessarily hospitals and systems and neighborhoods. I'm saying nurseries, places to trade, places to educate, places where we invite people, because the more people that know about everything, the more they can then spread the word and do all those things that we desire. Because that is a process, you can say, is going from a small plot of land to the whole world now doing what we're doing. That's a process, but I don't think of it as a process because it'll happen spontaneously, Wu Wei, the Taoist concept, if you open the door and allow the spontaneity to be of itself, to grow of itself. That's why the Chinese word for nature is
Listen,
it's a
if
ring.
you build it, they will come, right? You've heard that before,
Al
right?
Bundy.
Listen,
Yes.
Jim Gale is the perfect example of this, right? But he's not the only one in my life today
There's so
that
many
has that
people like
example.
us want what we're talking about.
Like-
So many, and many people, the youth. How many people in the youth that I talk to that love
At these events.
plants? Yes,
At these
they
events.
love plants. They love seeing like flowers. They love seeing like touching it and smelling it and seeing the animals.
Yeah.
They love that. So they don't have to agree with us on freedom, but they can encapsulate and start living
What
freedom and
nature
then start
is,
to
what
realize
natural
what it
law.
is because they feel it and they are there and the energy brings them in. And I guarantee you, we had people who walked into Jim Gale's event who had no clue what it was and they were like, "What is this?" And their mind was
Overwhelmed.
open.
Yeah, mind overloaded.
So
like,
it's not
oh my
that
God,
we
these
have to
people are
try.
living off grid basically, with
We
no
don't want
answer
to
to anything.
try. We want to provide what we can within our communities and invite everybody that already is on board. I met so many people who are like, I want a piece of land, or I want to do farming, or I can't do it in my backyard. So I want to bring all those people together, and I want to set up a Zoom call, and I want to share this plan, and I can set up a GoFundMe as well, if I have to, on my channel. Okay, and I have a
And
video
we
channel.
do
We have
have
video
some
channels.
people
We have
that
a
are willing
network.
to
We can
invest.
reach out to people. We can
We
do this
do
over a
have
span
it.
of years.
It's not
but
impossible.
no matter what, it will happen. It's just a matter of time. Because there's a lot of people who want to do it, and there's a lot of people with money down here, and there's a lot of people who just don't know what to do with it.
What
And
exactly is it? What are we talking about?
So it's a plot of land where we have food forests, just as Jim Gale does.
Okay.
But my vision of it, this
Maybe
is my vision,
animal
because
reserve section.
yeah, so the investors are obviously going to pitch in. Like, I don't want to have too much of an idea of what it should be because I want to get people's,
Input.
Ideas.
That's
Right.
why we're doing
But
this thing.
my vision, which Cameron, part of Jim Gale's team is like, don't stray away from your vision. Like, if you have it,
God,
stick with it.
I want to be in a position where I'm focusing on a hospital, guys.
Yeah, that's
really.
a good thing.
Like,
yeah.
imagine that.
Yeah.
So
Imagine that.
I'm thinking I want to reach the youth. I really do. And I think that this might sound strange at first, a tea house. Now, because you can grow tea in this soil, and we have the same soil as similar to Asia. And
Tea party.
this is different from Jim Gale's place. I don't want
I've
to
heard
be the
that
exact
before.
same as Jim's place. I want to be a little different, and I want to bring more of the youth because I am among that generation. I want to grow tea plants in the camellia family and have flowers growing everywhere around the food forest so it looks beautiful, not just that you have food. And not only that, the flowers on camellia and camellia, they're edible too. The seeds you can crush and turn into hair products, skin products. And a lot of kids nowadays struggle from acne and skin problems, and we can sell them here, and we can network with you. We can set up farmers markets. I can invite health coaches to do their practice on site. We can do Tai Chi there. I could do health coaching. We would have a tea house, right? I was thinking more of an octagonal shape with a nice porch around the whole side. A library where people can also learn. There's going to be books and bookshelves, and there's
gather
book
and
drops,
change-
and we can
exchange
share. I can share
ideas.
my Liberator 2 newspaper every week. People can go there. And it'll be like a little headquarters for that too. It would just be a one-stop hub for everything. And the minute somebody walks in, they're inspired because that's exactly how I felt when I went to Jim's place. Which is why when I came here with this vision, it didn't leave me. I had it with me, and I was like, I can't let this go. I couldn't let it go off my mind because I know Jim, and I talk to him, and I know these people, and they're like, I'm willing to help you. And you know what they said to me? They said, don't worry about the money. If you have a vision, we can do it. And they said, if you have a vision, if you have flowers, if you have a certain way of doing things, you want to grow
And
green
my
tea,
son,
we
since
can do it.
13, when he said he's going to do something, he's done it.
it.
So I'm not worried
Four
about
books
it.
later.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing is,
Four
it's not,
books later,
I don't want to have
several
ego.
websites and
It's
a
just
whole lot
about-
of videos.
You have to have a
Dad's
vision,
hair,
and you have
you
to
know,
be focused. We live
stress
in the
me out.
modern day of technology. Anything is possible, literally, if you set your mind to it. And even if it's not immediate, I don't expect anything to
So
be.
we have a list here, and this is what
Yes.
we're going to ask you
We're
guys.
finally going to get to
So that's the
list.
big
Yeah,
idea. Now,
well,
we
no,
have
no,
some
no.
others.
This is the thing, right? So, like, if you guys know of any universities that are local to the area that you think might want to embrace what we're doing. If you guys have any skill sets or talents or topics that you personally have experience and you know, man, it's my passion, I want to get involved, I want to tell people about this, we want you to write it down on this list.
Now, I feel like, oh, are you guys going to be accepted going to colleges? I don't worry about that because our message is so simple and we have no agenda. If I said we had an agenda, we were doomsday people.
We're non-political.
Yeah, it's non-political.
So,
It should be okay to
like,
get in.
who's going to disagree growing food? Or if I can connect with my generation and I can like sympathize with them, which I can, and even if they are like leftist or right wing, I can sympathize with them. I can just say like, because they're not dumb. Like, yeah, they've been indoctrinated and misguided, right, in different ways, but you can't, they're just kids. They're just kids. They're still people. They still have hearts. They still want to be inspired. They still want to be free.
Let's get them
There's
before
that
they
part
get
of
too
them.
old.
We were there.
The only thing I would add to
We were
the
there.
list, and I call it the Great Awakening, okay? It's a worldwide event that we're headed towards slavery instead of freedom, and we better wake up.
We are in
Start
slavery.
following.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, we're
I just,
It's
I,
not
I
we're
don't-
heading
I'm not
into
gonna go
slavery.
my
We are in
generation and
slavery.
Say that outright.
Well, you have to have something to tell them.
I will have to tell them.
The Telegram platform that we utilize is probably the simplest, right? So that's why we're using it. A personal situation in my life that recently happened. My mother passed away on the 20th of November. Now this woman, she's 81 years old. She outlived the doctor that told her 35 years ago that she was going to die in 5 years. She outlived him. You know what I'm saying? So like, this is a remarkable woman that had a remarkable life. But I'm honoring her, and I'm probably going to do it sometime late January, early February. The reason I bring that up is because there's no better way for me to honor my mother than to bring the element of care to society the best way that I can. I'm going to be putting on an event for her in the wee morning to early afternoon hours, but I'm renting the space and I'm renting the food, you know, I'm paying for the catering and everything else out of what I would normally do for her as a regular course of action, celebration of her life. But I'm going to keep the space and utilize it to talk to people about things that they need to care about, okay? One of the things being getting out of the system, the true history of our humanity, like what's really going on. The true ideologies that are keeping us separate from the system or entangled into the system, and what the differences are and what voluntarism really is and the importance of caring. Like that's the levels we have that we're talking about here. So the opportunity is there for people to speak about things that they know about, right? And we would love to have you come and be involved with, you know, talking about.
Speak.
Well, no, you wouldn't have to necessarily speak. Maybe you're bringing your products and putting them on a table and vending them at that location at that time. It doesn't always have to be through verbiage. It does. You know, it's the action or the wares or your services that you provide. Like for example, my best friend in this entire world, Bob Akoff, he operates a business called Perseverance Property Management. You've heard me mention it at a couple of the events. But we go in, we do clean outs and trash outs, we do estate, you know, liquidations, we do all kinds of stuff. But the reason I'm saying that is because there's always something that somebody can bring to the table that can help other people without having to do what we're standing here doing right now. So it could be something as simple as sitting at a registration table and saying, please just sign your name and your email here, you know, something like that. You know, so these are the kind of things we're trying to get from people. Because obviously 2 people or 3 people, even 4 people can't do it alone. But if we could put a collective together of people that like, when they come, they're doing this part, and you know, they're setting up the table to offer raw milk and eggs, and you know, this person over here's setting up a table and they're talking about, you know, this type of situation, or you know, better water for yourselves, or whatever, you know, like whatever it is, we would like your value and your input to be a part of this process.